owner of the US Mega Farm. Este video es puramente para entretenimiento y no infringe derechos de autor en los derechos de la novela y la imagen son del autor original, no reclamamos propiedad. No te gusta esperar y quieres escuchar este fanfic completo ahora? Suscríbete a nuestro Patreon, donde encontrarás los mejores fanfics. Chapter 76. Build a scaffold. In the early morning, the warm sunlight poured directly into the spacious and luxurious bedroom through the huge French window, making the already luxurious bedroom even more magnificent. Who was dreaming in the simple nest, felt warm in his body. He couldn't help but open his blue eyes and looked around. He shook his head a little confused and looked at Kinzu, who was sleeping soundly on the big bed. Well, the owner hasn't gotten up yet, so he can sleep for a while. So he nudged his big brother with his head, changed to a comfortable position and continued to sleep. When Kinzu woke up, it was almost 9 o'clock in the morning. Rubbing his sleepy eyes and looking at the bright sunshine outside the French window, Kinzu sat up and stretched his body. It's a good day again. Kinzu sighed. Life is so comfortable now. Although he didn't count money until his hands cramped, he had already realized that he could sleep until he woke up naturally. Yawning and getting out of bed, Kinzu looked at the two idiots who were still sleeping soundly in the corner, and couldn't help muttering, "What lazy guys, they haven't gotten up yet." Lamenting his lazy hair, Kinzu walked into the bathroom and started to wash up, not thinking about what people often say, like the owner, like the pet. After washing up and walking out of the bathroom, Kinzu found a pair of jeans to put on, and then put on a sky blue long-sleeve plaid shirt, changed into riding boots, and went to wake up the two little guys who were still sleeping. Daha and Ho were awakened from their sleep, opened their sleepy eyes in a daze, looked at the hateful big face in front of them, and really wanted to bite it. Kinzu looked at the cute and confused look of the two idiots, and the bad taste of the successful prank was deeply satisfied. He picked up the cowboy hat hanging next to him and put it on, and Kinzu hugged the two little guys who were getting angry when they got up, and went downstairs. "Hi, Eva, good morning." Kinzu walked downstairs and greeted Eva, who was busy in the kitchen. Eva might have gotten up in a hurry today. She hadn't even changed out of her pajamas. She wore a set of cartoon pajamas on her sexy body, which made her look pure and seductive. "Clean, good morning. Breakfast will be ready soon. It's a little late today. Please wait for a while." Eva looked at Kinzu apologetically. She drank a lot yesterday. It was already past 8 o'clock when she woke up in the morning. Fortunately, Kinzu got up later than her, otherwise she would have had no breakfast. "It's okay. I'll go see Shiabai first and come back to wheat. You take care of the two little guys and give them some food first." Kinzu shrugged indifferently and said with a smile. Anyway, he wasn't very hungry now, so he went to give Shiabai a snack first. Putting Daha and her on the sofa, Kinzu rubbed their little heads a few times with a little force, seeing that they were still lazy. Looking at Daha and her, who were looking at him with aggrieved eyes and humming in protest, Kinzu walked out of the villa with a big laugh, leaving Eva, who was a little dazed, behind, and her, who looked a little innocent, on the sofa. After leaving the villa and walking on the way to the stable, Kinzu took a deep breath of the fresh and natural air in the ranch. Looking at the morning sun shining quietly on the ranch in the distance, the tiny clouds formed small white waves in the light blue and clear sky. "This is such a bright and fresh morning." While sighing, Kinzu entered the vegetable garden and pulled up a few big carrots. After arriving at the stable, he first cut the carrots into small pieces, and then came into the stable. After entering, looking at the slightly empty stable because there were only 2 spotted horses and Shiabai, he wondered if he should buy a few more horses. Shiabai had seen Kinzu and he just came in, and was snorting excitedly. If it hadn't been blocked by the door, it would have wanted to run out to find its master. "What time is it now? Do you want to starve the horse to death? If you don't feed it, I will go on strike today." Shiabai, who was snorting, was muttering indignantly in his heart. Looking at Shiabai, who was a little too active, Kinzu thought that this guy missed him, and praised him with relief. "Not bad, you are much better than those two idiots. You know you miss your master. Here, this is a reward for you." Shiabai's eyes were full of tears after hearing these words. "Is it easy for me to stutter? If I could speak, I would definitely spray you in the face. But for the sake of the carrot, I won't bother with you." Looking at Shiabai chewing the carrot, Kinzu took out the tools and began to clean this guy's body. Comrade Shiabai shook his big head comfortably and let Kinzu clean his body. At this moment, he was quite satisfied in his heart. After cleaning, seeing that Xiaobai had also finished eating 2 large carrots, Qinzu took out the sweat-pad and saddle to put on it, climbed on the horse, and rode around the ranch. When Qinzu returned to the villa, he found that only Dale and Eva were up, and the others were still sleeping. Shaking his head and sighing that the people in the city were really lazy, Qinzu greeted the 2 girls and went to the bathroom to wash his hands. When Qinzu came out, Eva had already brought him breakfast on the dining table. After Qinzu walked to the dining table and sat down, Eva smiled and exclaimed, "Clean, you ate first, but there is still some inside. Several guests are still sleeping. I was afraid that the breakfast would get cold, so I left the breakfast in the pot and didn't serve it." Qinzu smiled, praised Eva for her hard work, and then began to look at today's breakfast: a small bowl of oatmeal porridge, a fried egg, and a ham sandwich. First, he tasted the oatmeal porridge. This was Qinzu's first time eating this thing. Don't say it, it tastes pretty good. After finishing a fairly hearty breakfast, Qinzu said hello to Eva, who was cleaning the table, and then got up and went to the garage. Arriving at the underground garage, Qinzu opened the door of the night the 15th and got in. Today he was going to Revere to buy some wood strips and build some vegetable racks in the vegetable garden, otherwise it would be troublesome to do it after the beans and cucumbers grew out. After starting the car, Qinzu stepped on the accelerator, and the night the 15th roared loudly and rushed out of the underground garage. Driving on the road, feeling the superior performance and comfortable driving environment of the night the 15th, Qinzu felt satisfied. This was the first time he drove it out after buying it. Listening to the constant honking of horns along the way, Qinzu knew how attractive his car was. The monster roared all the way into the city of Revere, shocking many passers-by along the way. There is such a car. Thank you very much for the support of Lavian and Kankung Bama. Thank you, and finally ask for votes. By the way, I would like to inform all the book friends that in order to make Liaoun more motivated to write during the Chinese New Year, starting from now, 1 chapter will be added for every 500 recommendation votes, and 1 chapter will be added for every 5,000 recommendation votes, with no upper limit. If I can get the fantasy leader, Liaoun will act 5 chapters. Of course, that's just fantasy. Liaoun will make up for the extra chapters during the Chinese New Year. Book friends, please use all your votes. By the way, I would like to recommend a friend's new book, Super Medical System, which is a very good book. The key point is that the author is a girl. Chapter 77 Picnic, Part 1. Night the 15th was very arrogant and stopped at the door of a hardware and building materials store in downtown Revere. Qinzu jumped out of the car in front of the salesgirl's dumbfounded expression. Nodding at the dumbfounded salesgirl, Qinzu walked into the hardware and building materials store under her starry eyes. After strolling around the store, he selected some long wooden strips and ropes for building shelves, and bought some small tools. Qinzu checked out and went out. When he dragged the things to the door, Qinzu was a little dumbfounded. He was just pretending to be cool. He drove an off-road vehicle to buy things. How could he pull them back now? He looked at the large bundle of long wooden strips on the ground and wanted to put it in the inventory, but this was in the street in full view of everyone. His car definitely couldn't fit it. Besides, if these things were put in, wouldn't he have to clean the interior of his car again? He rubbed his head with a headache. Sure enough, this person should not be impulsive. It would be great if he drove a pickup truck. He had no choice but to turn around and walk back. Looking at the saleswoman who was still a little stunned at the door, Qinzu rubbed his face, squeezed out a bright smile and walked over. Ashley is a young white girl. Although she is not very beautiful, she is also a good-looking type. Because of her lively and cheerful personality, the manager let her be responsible for the external reception of this building materials market. Just when she was working peacefully, she suddenly heard a very arrogant car engine sound coming from outside. When she walked out to see, she saw a behemoth parked at the door. Looking at an oriental man who'd got off the monster, Ashley looked at him with envy and jealousy. This car is really cool. People who can afford it must be very rich. Looking at his bag disappearing in the market, Ashley began to be distracted. First, she guessed how much money he had, and then wondered what he was doing here. Just when Ashley was wondering what this Asian man was doing here, she suddenly heard a voice in authentic American English. "Hi, beautiful lady. Hello, do you know where I can call a pickup truck nearby?" She turned around with some confusion and saw that it was the handsome oriental man just now. "Yes, sir, where are you going? Do you need a taxi?" Ashley answered with a little stutter. Nodding, Kinzu shrugged helplessly. Yes, I didn't expect to buy so many things, so I didn't drive a pickup truck here. Can you help me call a pickup truck to Hill Manor in the suburbs? Hill Manor? Are you clean? Oh my god, thank you for helping us eradicate a cancer. Ashley bowed to Kinzu. Kinzu was caught off guard by the girl's enthusiasm. He smiled awkwardly and said modestly, nothing. Even if you knew about this, you would definitely do the same. After a light laugh, Ashley said nothing. Maybe, but the chance was really small. Turning back to the market, Ashley picked up the phone and called a driver who often came here to deliver goods. After the call was connected, Ashley told the situation and the driver agreed directly. After agreeing to meet at the door in 10 minutes, Ashley turned around and went back outside. Okay, clean, the car will be here soon. Do you want to come in and wait? After coming outside, Ashley said directly to Kinzu. Kinzu smiled at this warm-hearted girl and said politely, thank you so much for today. Otherwise, I don't know how to go back. Nothing. It's our job to satisfy customers. Ashley smiled indifferently. The two chatted for a while, and then a small box truck drove over. When the car stopped beside Kinzu and the others, a middle-aged white man in his 40s with a beer belly opened the door and got out. Hi, Ellie, long time no see, is this clean? As soon as the middle-aged white man got out of the car, he greeted Ashley enthusiastically, looking very familiar. Then he turned around and looked at Kinzu and asked. Yes, that's right, Uncle Laurent, this is Keen from Hill Manor. He has to transport some things back to the ranch today. Ashley ignored the guy's previous words of long time no see and answered from the back. Kinzu listened to the two people's introductions, and then greeted Laurent enthusiastically, then pointed to a large bundle of wood on the ground and said, Lawrence, I'll trouble you to help me transport these things to the manor. Lawrence looked at the large bundle of small wood on the ground, which was large but obviously didn't have much stuff in it, and picked it up with one hand and put it on the car. Seeing that the other person was so straightforward, Kinzu did not delay any longer. After saying hello to the reluctant girl, he got on his cool night the 15th. After driving the car and motioning Lawrence to follow, he went directly to the ranch. After arriving at the ranch, when paying the freight, Lawrence refused to accept it, saying that it was not far away, and Keen, you have done a great thing for our revere. Kinzu finally couldn't persuade Lawrence. After thanking him, he sent him off the ranch. He shook his head and smiled bigly. He didn't expect that he ate so fast in Revere. After parking the car in the garage, Kinzu returned to the villa and found that only Eva and Dale were in the living room. No one else had gotten up yet. Looking at the time, it didn't take him long in total. It was just 10 o'clock, so he called Dale and Eva and prepared to take them to set up the shelf together. Eva and the other girl agreed, and went upstairs to change into a set of denim clothes that were more resistant to dirt and came down. Kinzu didn't want to take his eyes off the buttocks that were tightly held by the jeans. When they came to the outside of the villa, Kinzu and Dale carried the wooden strips and walked in front, while Eva followed behind with a rope. The three of them walked towards the vegetable garden together. When they arrived at the vegetable garden, they looked at the vibrant green ocean and opened their mouths in surprise. The growth rate was too fast. Kinzu was also scratching his head. It was not a good thing to grow too fast. If the speed of withering was the same as the growth, he would cry to death. How could they finish eating so many vegetables? However, looking at the cucumber vines that were already lying on the ground, Kinzu knew that there was not much time now, so he should hurry up and put up the racks. After greeting the three of them started to work. Thank you very much for the support of Kankan Bama, Zaishin Wenye Chungong, and Kankano Oleme. Thank you very much. Si estes Kushanda Western Novela on Canal Distinta Mundo Fanfic Novelas, Significat Lo Descarga and Y Subir and Sinisfuetzos Invitamas Cordialmente Visitar Nuestro Canal. Mundo Fanfic Novelas all encontras la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos narradores. Te esperamos para sumergirte en un mundo de novelas incredibles. Chapter 78 Picnic, Part 2. Since Dale basically didn't know how to do these farm work, Eva and Kinzu were the ones who were there to stick the wooden strips into the soil and hold them up, and she was there to help with the ropes. Although there weren't many things to plant, the three of them were busy for almost an hour to get them done. Looking at the rows of wooden racks standing in the vegetable garden, it is estimated that they will all turn green tomorrow. After finishing the work in the vegetable garden, the three of them walked back to the villa together. When they entered the door, they heard the chattering in the living room. Walking into the living room, they saw everyone sitting at the dining table eating breakfast. Maggie's was still talking about something, and everyone laughed. "Hey, you guys are really early, the sun is about to set," Kinzu said with a smile and joked. As soon as these words came out, everyone's faces were slightly hot. This was what Maggie said just now. She just got up a little earlier than everyone else, and she was proud of herself in front of them. "Now it's okay. I'm so sorry, Teen. We were so happy yesterday that we drank a little too much." Anna touched her hot face and explained awkwardly. "Hey, Anna, don't mind, I was just joking." Seeing that everyone was a little embarrassed, Kinzu quickly changed the subject and asked, "How is it? Everyone feels okay? Are you going horseback riding today?" Hearing Kinzu's question, everyone put aside the awkward topic and started a heated discussion. Maggie's knocked on the table beside her and saw that everyone's eyes were focused on her. After a light cough, he was the first to express his opinion. "What do you think? Should we go hunting? I heard hunting is fun." Asaza, who was standing next to him, raised her hands excitedly to express her agreement. Yes, this place is so close to the Appalachian Mountains, let's go there." However, Anna frowned and said, "In this case, we won't have enough time. It's almost noon now. We won't have enough fun if we rush here and there. How about we go horseback riding?" "I haven't learned it yet," Riley said weakly at the side. "There are so many people, and you're the only one who hasn't learned to ride a horse." "How dare you say that?" Maggie glared at her boyfriend with some dissatisfaction. Riley was so aggrieved. "What do you call riding a horse? After all, my buddy can ride a horse by himself. What do you do? Are you being led by someone to run?" Although he felt very aggrieved, Riley did not dare to argue. Not to mention that he had spent a lot of money to pursue this girlfriend. Just saying that he was now stared at by 4 pairs of sharp eyes, he did not dare to express any opinions. Sammy was secretly laughing beside him. Fortunately he did not say anything. Facing Ollie's meaningful eyes, Sammy gave her a look that said everything was up to you. Ollie smiled with satisfaction and looked at Anna. Anna also raised her eyebrows at her. Good family education. Seeing that the only objection was suppressed, Anna nodded with satisfaction. Although she said that there was not enough time, she did not say that she did not want to go. After all, they are all lively and active, and these boys' sports are more popular with them. Watching their discussion, Kinzu was sweating a little. These 2 foreign devils were too submissive, so they just admitted their weakness. Just these few people went hunting. What a joke, 6 women, 2 little submissives, and only a big man. Well, okay, Dale is one of them, but with just a few people and a few guns, they want to go hunting in the Appalachian Mountains. Seeing that they had already agreed and were about to pack up and go, Kinzu quickly interrupted. Hey, guys, you are not serious, are you? Just a few of us going hunting." Anna stopped getting up and looked at Kinzu with a puzzled look and said, "Clean, what's wrong? Is it not possible?" Covering his head with a headache, Kinzu said helplessly, "Dear Anna, do you know what is in the Appalachian Mountains? Mountain lions, wild wolves, brown bears, pythons, tigers and leopards." After listing a lot of dangerous animals in one breath, looking at Anna who was a little dazed, Kinzu continued, "And we don't have a few guns, are we going in to give them food?" Anna was a little entangled now. What should she do now? Looking back at the 3 women who were also a little entangled, they sat down again and continued to discuss the meeting. Riley tried to interject a few times, but was glared at by Max's. In the end, he could only draw circles silently in the corner. Finally, Eva saw that it was almost noon and everyone had not yet decided where to go, so she interjected. "How about this, we can just walk around at the foot of the mountain and think of it as a picnic." As soon as this was said, the girl's eyes lit up. This was a good idea. Going to the mountains for a picnic at the foot of the mountain would not be dangerous. Kinzu also thought this was a good idea. At the foot of the mountain, relying on himself and Dale, and calling John, there should be no danger, so everyone happily decided. Since they decided on a place to go, everyone went back to the room to change and pack. At least they had to change into long-sleeve clothes to go into the mountains, otherwise those insects would be annoying. Kinzu also went back to the room and changed into a long-sleeve denim suit and a pair of long boots. He looked in the mirror and felt that he was handsome. Kinzu opened the gun cabinet, put the beret into the inventory, put a lot of bullets into the inventory, and then walked downstairs with the Remington 750 on his back. When he got downstairs, Kinzu took out his phone and called John. John was busy in the living area at this time. When he heard that the boss was going to go to the mountains, he rode over as soon as possible. Seeing John walking in fully armed, Kinzu was a little amused. This uncle actually wore a set of clothes similar to those of American soldiers, with an F-1911 on his waist and a Remington 750 on his back. "Hey, John, you look really handsome in this outfit." Kinzu whistled at the handsome middle-aged man and praised him with a smile. John smiled and said, "Boss, you should be a little careful when you go into the mountains, otherwise it will be troublesome if something goes wrong." He nodded in agreement, and Kinzu also felt that safety was more important. After waiting for a while, everyone gathered together. The women also changed into long-sleeved denim clothes and wore long boots. Dale also had a rifle on his back that Kinzu didn't recognize, which looked very cool. Seeing that everyone had arrived, Kinzu was just about to set off when he felt something under his feet. Chapter 79 Picnic, Part 2. Looking down, it turned out to be the two little guys, Daho and her, who were now anxiously turning back and forth under his feet. The two guys seemed to know that Kinzu was going out, and he didn't take them with him. They were shaking their little tails vigorously. Now Kinzu hesitated a little. "You said that if you grow up, I will take you out hunting. That's really nothing to say. But you are such a big thing now, why are you following me? I guess it's not enough to give the wild wolves a chance to show their teeth." But if these two guys are left alone at home, Kinzu is really worried. "Clean, take them with you, let me take care of them." Eva looked at Kinzu's embarrassed expression and volunteered. "Yes, we can help take care of them, Clean, take them with you." Anna looked at Eva and volunteered, and said unwillingly, "Since someone is taking care of them, Kinzu doesn't care, just take them with you." So Eva and Anna each carried one of the two dogs, and prepared some marinated meat and vegetables that could be grilled directly, so as not to go hungry today. After leaving the house, there were two sturdy Australian cattle dogs squatting at the door of the villa. They were the badge that had just been bought last time. Kinzu looked at John in confusion. Why were they here? Don't they have to work? Clean, how can hunting be done without hounds? Although cattle dogs are not as good as well-trained hounds, they are still enough for letting people go. John saw Kinzu's confusion and explained with a smile. Kinzu suddenly realized that they were hounds. Although he, a little otaku, had never been exposed to hunting, he had seen pigs run even if he had never eaten pork. However, these two cattle dogs that looked majestic just now, after seeing the big and two huskies in the arms of the two women, they immediately lay on the ground, a little humble. Kinzu looked a little strange. Didn't his own dogs have wolf genes? Aren't cattle dogs and wolves supposed to be opposites? No matter how you look at the current situation, it seems that Daha's leadership talent has taken effect. Although he was confused, this was an effect that Kinzu was happy to see, so he ignored the cattle dog lying on the ground. He was ready to lead everyone to the depths of the ranch. Because there were not enough horses, Kinzu and John rode in front to lead the way, the Dale sisters followed at the end, and the other six drove 3 four-wheel motorcycles in the middle. Some of the ingredients and pots and pans they brought were directly handed over to Relay and Sammy for safekeeping. The two little ones were blessed, and now they were hugged by Anna and hummed comfortably. Kinzu was envious of him and really wanted to yell, "Let go of that girl, let me do it." As for the two Australian shepherds, they could only run with them. Fortunately, as cattle dogs, they needed regular exercise. In addition, Kinzu and his team didn't walk fast, so they could still keep up with the team. After trotting all the way, Kinzu and his team finally arrived at the foot of the Appalachian Mountains before 11 o'clock. After everyone got off the car, Kinzu put Xiaobai and several horses on the grass nearby to graze. After telling Xiaobai not to run around, Kinzu looked at the endless Appalachian Mountains in the distance. The winding and circling mountains were like a sleeping dragon. The white clouds were everywhere, and the peaks were surrounded by clouds and mist. The mountain tops poked out of the clouds and mist, like lotus flowers emerging from the water. This is the life I want, picking chrysanthemums under the eastern fence, leisurely seeing the southern mountains, without having to punch into work every day, and living without having to live according to other people's faces. All this should be thanked to the unknown great god and my little elf Fefade. It seems that I haven't seen Fefade for a long time. Kinzu, who was thinking about his own things, was awakened by the powerful tenor voice coming from the side. Looking up at John, who was looking at him with a puzzled look, Kinzu smiled awkwardly and said, "Looking at this spectacular scenery, I'm a little shocked." John looked at his boss with some confusion. "Isn't it just a mountain? What's so shocking?" Seeing John's look of confusion, Kinzu explained, "Our family is in the plains. I have never seen mountains since I was a child. Every time I see them, I feel very shocked." He nodded as if he understood. Anyway, as a cowboy who has lived in this area for most of his life, John said that he didn't understand the boss's feelings at all, but who made him the boss? What he said is what it is. Kinzu also knew that it was difficult for a person who had lived in the mountains for half his life to understand the shock of seeing the mountains after living in the plains for more than 10 years, so he didn't dwell on this issue. Looking at Anna and the others who were taking pictures with apples in the distance, Kinzu said, "Guys, we should set off, otherwise we will be hungry at noon." "Okay, we'll be there soon." Anna waved her hand from afar and agreed, then turned to Isa and said, "Quick, Isa, take another picture for your sister here." Then she turned to ask Dale to borrow the rifle with the magazine removed, climbed onto a big rock with the gun, and began to pose. Kinzu was confused. "Are they out hunting or taking pictures for you?" After a long time, everyone started today's picnic trip. John led the way with a Remington and an Australian Shepherd. Kinzu and Dale also took their guns in their hands and led an Australian Shepherd to clean up the rear. Eva and Anna, each holding a husky, walked in the middle with the rest of the people. Fortunately, the whole team was not too far away, so they could take care of anything. Along the way, they walked through one meadow after another, passed by a small forest, climbed over a small mound, and waded through a small stream. Everyone was talking and laughing, looking at the blue sky, green grass, and the various birds that were startled from time to time. It was leisurely and comfortable. Of course, Rulai and Sammy were the busiest. Not only did they have to carry various ingredients and pots along the way, but they also had to stop constantly to take photos with several girls. In the end, even Kinzu was pulled over by Anna and took a few photos with everyone. Nothing happened along the way. The two Australian Shepherds were also very quiet. After walking for about half an hour, John stopped in front and turned his head and said loudly, "Boss, we're here. Let's have a picnic there. It is the gathering place where we used to hunt before, and the scenery is also pretty good." Hearing what John said, Kinzu didn't have time to say anything, and several girls agreed to this proposal in unison. After walking for so long, after the initial excitement, they felt a little tired from walking like this all the time. Thanks to the great author Qixing Li for his 100 book coins reward. Liu Yun expressed his gratitude for everyone's reward and recommendation votes. "Thank you all, 1 go, 2 bows, 3 bows. It's a new week in the bridal chamber. Guys, please vote for the recommendation. Thank you." Chapter 80 White-tailed Deer. Kinzu could only smile helplessly, turned his head and looked around. There were only some ordinary woods, and the scenery was just so-so. However, since everyone agreed, he was too lazy to say anything. Anyway, he didn't care much about it. Seeing Kinzu nod in agreement, the 4 women and 2 men beside him cheered, but the 2 men cheered as if they were finally free, while the 4 women cheered with expectation. Since the boss had no objection, John led everyone to continue inside. After walking more than 100 meters forward and coming to a small meadow, Kinzu suddenly felt bright in front of his eyes. It was only 100 meters, but it gave Kinzu the feeling that he was in 2 completely different places. Although it was also a mountain forest just now, the trees were not too tall, just some ordinary trees. But now what appeared in front of Kinzu was a small piece of grass. Behind that grass, Kinzu looked over and saw basically some towering trees that required one person to hug. According to Kinzu's own estimation, these trees are at least 100 years old, and the trees are covered with thick vines, densely packed like spider webs. And under the tree is the dense bush, which looks like it was painted with rich colors, red, yellow, green and purple, very beautiful. "Let's take a rest here, there is water over there," John said, pointing to the side, and then led the way to that side. After following John for dozens of meters, a stream appeared next to the grass. It was a trickle, with no visible splashes of water and no sound of running water. It just flowed calmly and quietly. The stream water was light blue, and the pebbles in the water were as big as goose eggs and as small as pigeon eggs. Each one was white and crystal clear. Occasionally, some pebbles were spotted, which looked like quail eggs. The arrival of Kinzu and others startled several fawns that were drinking water beside the stream. The fawns were very beautiful, with light black patterns printed on their light yellow fur, showing a beautiful luster. The pair of branch-like horns on their heads proudly rose to the sky. At this time, the fawns stopped drinking water, and were looking up at Kinzu and his party curiously, and they did not seem to be very afraid of them. When he was in China, Kinzu had no chance to see this kind of deer in the wild. Well, no, it should be said that he had never seen a real deer except on TV. This guy doesn't even have a girlfriend in China. He stays at home every day except for work. He occasionally goes out for drinks with friends. He has never been to places like zoos. Now that he can see these cute guys in the wild with his own eyes, Kinzu couldn't help but take out his rich gold and start taking pictures of these cute guys. Boss, this is a white-tailed deer, which is a common deer in the United States. And because there are too many of them, they have not been hunted much, so they don't seem to be too afraid of us. John was telling Dale to get some water. He turned around and saw that Kinzu was interested in these little deer. He smiled and introduced them to him. He shrugged helplessly at the end, which looked very funny. Kinzu found it funny. But he heard that this was a white-tailed deer, but he didn't seem to see its tail. He stared at the deer in the distance and looked carefully. Sure enough, Kinzu found a short white tail behind the deer. Because the deer were facing them and they were close to each other, Kinzu didn't notice it at the first time. But this short tail seemed to add a bit of cuteness to them. After taking a few more photos at them, Kinzu looked at the few photos on his phone and waved to Eva, who was teasing her. Eva, help me take a photo of these cute guys. Then he handed her the phone. Eva took the phone and nodded with a smile, saying, no problem, boss, go a little further back. Get closer to them. Kinzu walked a few steps over there and got closer to the deer. Because he was afraid of scaring them away, he stopped after a few steps and turned to look at Eva. It's okay, boss, get closer to them. Yes, get closer. They are not afraid of people. We still have to be afraid of them in winter. Seeing Kinzu's expression as if he was afraid of scaring the deer, Eva shook her head helplessly. Kinzu looked at Eva in silence. Are they afraid of deer? These are not ferocious beasts. How can you explain that they're afraid of carnivores such as wolves, tigers, and lions? Seeing Kinzu's expression as if he was kidding, John said helplessly, boss, this is true. When winter comes, there will be no food in the mountains, and a large group of deer will go down the mountain. Then we will really be afraid of them. Kinzu couldn't help but shudder when he imagined the scene of hundreds of deer coming down the mountain together. It would be better not to see such a slightly scary scene. However, Kinzu suddenly thought of something, looked at John, and asked curiously, John, don't you all have weapons? Why don't you hunt some first? Boss, hunting in the United States requires a hunting license, and there are also regulations on the number of deer you have to hunt. If you exceed the limit or do not have a hunting license, then it is illegal. Shrugged, John said with an unhappy look. He had a lot of opinions about these. Hunting requires a license, which is too troublesome. But the good thing is that by the time, this restriction will be meaningless, and the government will encourage everyone to go into the mountains to hunt. Well, Kinzu said he was speechless, and walked towards the deer silently again. Sure enough, the deer didn't react. Two of them lowered their heads and continued to drink water. With a determined heart, Kinzu came to them and stood about 2 meters away. Now several deer reacted, and those who drank water also raised their heads neatly and stopped drinking. Eva seized the opportunity and signaled Kinzu after a few clicks. Kinzu hurried over, took the phone and looked at it carefully. Well, Kinzu stood alone in the middle of the deer, and the photo was not bad. A good phone is different. At this time, Dale also came back with water, so everyone returned to the grassland just now and prepared to make a temporary camp. After arriving on the grass, Riley and Sammy put their things down and were sighing that they were finally free when they heard a voice from the distance. Hey, Riley, you and Sammy go pick up some firewood. After a sigh, the two looked at each other and had to go pick up firewood miserably, because they had the lowest status in this team. Chapter 81 Hunting. Please recommend. Looking at Anna and Maxis, who are so proud of themselves, Kinzu really didn't know what to say. Didn't you guys come for a picnic? Why do you have to ask someone to help you pick up some dry firewood? Kinzu originally wanted Maxis to take Anna and the other girls to pick up some dry firewood nearby. Anyway, with Dale watching, there was no need to worry about any danger. But he knew that before Kinzu finished speaking, Maxis yelled directly, and then the two poor little bottoms, Riley and Sammy, went there obediently. Looking at the backs of the two with pity, Kinzu muttered to himself, Brother, it's not that I don't help you, it's just that you are too weak. Since someone went to pick up dry firewood, Kinzu asked Maxis and Anna to spread insect repellent powder, and asked Eva to set up the pot, and asked Dale to protect them. He and John, each with an Australian Shepherd, went around to check the situation. Kinzu originally wanted to check one side at a time, but when John saw him rushing into the woods with a gun in hand and wandering around like a fool, he didn't care that Kinzu was the boss and directly vetoed Kinzu's proposal. After stopping Kinzu, John asked him to follow him and taught him as he walked. Boss, when checking the surrounding situation, you can ignore the bushes, because there are things in the dense bushes that cannot be detected by the naked eye. As long as the dogs don't react, don't worry about it. He patted the sturdy body of the Australian Shepherd in front of him. Kinzu looked at the Australian Shepherd, but his mind was distracted. It seemed that he hadn't strengthened his own cattle dogs yet. Well, he had to find a time to strengthen them all, so that he would feel more secure. John's voice interrupted Kinzu's contemplation, and he continued, "Of course, boss, the dog can't always be with you. If there is no dog around, then you should observe the grass and twigs around the bushes from a distance. If there is no bending or breaking, it means that the bushes are fine. This method is the most commonly used in jungle camping. It is simple and practical, and generally very accurate." Now, John uses this method to see if there are hoof prints on the trail, or if the weeds and twigs on both sides are broken. If there are none, it means that no large carnivores are passing by, so it is safe. Another place to pay attention to is the big trees and big rocks. These places are easy for carnivores to leave their own scent, indicating that this area is their territory. If the dog is normal, then continue to search forward. Of course, it is normal for dogs to rub against the trees or urinate. After walking around for a long time and making sure it was safe, John led Kinzu, who was full of admiration, to the camp. Kinzu had indeed learned a lot of knowledge about survival in the wild today. He sighed that John was indeed worthy at being an old cowboy and knew a lot. Back to the camp, Riley and Sammy, the two brothers in distress, had already returned. Seeing everyone's excitement, Kinzu smiled and said, "We have more people and fewer guns, so let's split into two groups." Everyone had no objection, so Kinzu said to John, "John, you take Riley, Sammy, and Mackie's O'Leary, and you five will form a group. The rest of you will form a group with me, and we will split up and see who kills more." Seeing John nodded and said it was okay. Kinzu and the two sisters Dale and Eva, as well as Anna and Isa, walked in front with Kinzu and the Australian herder. Eva, Anna and Isa were in the middle, and Dale followed behind them to protect the back of the team, and walked into the forest together. Kinzu and his group walked slowly for dozens of meters. Suddenly, the Australian Shepherd running in front stopped, lowered its body, stretched its head and watched, but had no intention of moving forward. This was all John's recent training. They would not attack unless the owner gave orders. Seeing the performance of the dogs along the way, Kinzu felt that John had changed his career to become a trainer. Noticing its appearance, Kinzu understood that he had made a discovery. He signaled everyone to bend down, slow down their steps, slowly come to the side of the Australian Shepherd, and observe carefully. Sure enough, more than 20 meters away, Kinzu saw a fat chestnut hare with its back to them, leisurely chewing a wild fruit, eating while looking left and right, still vigilant, but ignoring the back. Kinzu pointed his hand, and Anna and Isa also found the hare. They immediately became very excited and refused to give in. They all wanted to take down this first prey. In the end, they had no choice but to ignore Kinzu and play rock paper scissors with Eva to decide the winner. Kinzu rolled his eyes. If they didn't hurry up, it would be funny if the hare ran away. Dale and Eva smiled and rejected Anna's kindness. One of them was a soldier who wanted to vomit from holding a gun, and the other was a cowboy who grew up on a ranch. How could they have never hunted before? In this case, Anna and Isa looked at each other, and sparks of fighting flashed in their eyes. Just when the two were full of momentum and were ready to decide the winner, Kinzu's voice suddenly came from the side. "If you don't hurry up, the prey will be gone." The momentum of the two women suddenly stagnated. Anna gave this bastard a helpless look and stretched out her hand at the same time as Isa. Rock, paper, scissors, the winner was decided by one hammer. In the end, Anna won and waved her fist happily. Fortunately, she remembered that she was hunting, otherwise, she would have lost all the rabbit hair if she shouted loudly. "Don't be happy, the rabbit is going to run away," Eva reminded in a funny whisper. When Anna heard this, she quickly took the M16 handed over by Dale, raised the gun and aimed. Because she closed one eye, the corner of her mouth unconsciously tilted to one side, which looked very cute. Kinzu smiled and looked at her for a few more times. Kinzu did not doubt whether Anna could use a gun. Although Anna had never hunted, there were few people in the United States who could not use guns. Gun stores were everywhere. Bang! The rabbit fell down. Anna cheered and was about to run over, but the Australian shepherd was faster than her and immediately ran up to take the rabbit back. Anna was so happy that she patted their heads to express her praise. He proudly shook the rabbit to Whizzer, which made her teeth itch. Of course, this was just a joke between friends, and there was no malice. Several people continued to move forward. It was good to have a dog. It became very simple to search for prey. As long as the Australian shepherd did not react, they would walk straight forward. If they showed a posture of wanting to sneak attack, Kinzu and his friends would search in the direction they were looking at and easily find prey. For a while, the chickens and rabbits in the forest were in danger. The two sides of the forest merged together, and gunshots were heard every 2 minutes or so. Kinzu even wondered if all the chickens and rabbits in the forest would be hunted down. But he couldn't help laughing when he thought about it. What would the Appalachian Mountains lack? Although this is just its remnant. This hunting competition is just to add some fun. Kinzu doesn't have to win. What's more, Kinzu still likes his craft. Thank you for the reward support from 10-years-old Worm. Although there have been few updates recently, I still recommend reward support. I will have a holiday in a few days, so I can focus on writing. Welcome everyone to join the Book Friends group, Leoun Villa, group number 332189705. Chapter 82. Heresy Amerina. As they continued to follow the Australian herd, Irza, who was looking around for prey beside the team, suddenly cried out, "Oh my god, Clean, look, what is that? It's so scary." Kinzu and his companions became nervous when they heard this. Dale came to Irza in one step and looked in the direction of Irza's finger with Kinzu. It didn't matter if they saw it, but they were stunned. They saw that someone had dug a hole in the middle of a dead tree in the distance and stuffed a white monkey head in it. Now even Eva and Anna covered their mouths and cried out in surprise. Only Dale remained calm, but looking at her slightly raised eyebrows, Kinzu knew that she was not calm either. Looking at the white monkey head embedded in the trees in the distance, Kinzu felt a little scared. How could such a cruel scene happen in this wilderness? After staring at it for a while, Kinzu turned around and was about to tell everyone to leave when a flash of inspiration came to his mind. He suddenly remembered a similar scene he had seen on the internet before. He immediately turned his body back halfway, staring at the white monkey head, and looked at it carefully for a long time. The more Kinzu looked, the more certain he was of his guess, so he used his Remington to push aside the bushes in front of him and walked inside. "Clean, where are you going?" Anna asked in surprise. Kinzu waved his hand and said nothing, but Dale also pushed aside the bushes and followed him. He stretched out his hand to stop Dale, who wanted to walk in front of him to open the way. He could follow her, as he was a little nervous, but he should let a man like him open the way. So Kinzu took the lead and strode forward. The closer he got, the more certain he was of his guess. When he strode to the tree, Kinzu directly reached out and took the white monkey head in his hand. Looking at the thing in his hand, it was just as he had guessed. It was actually a wild Heresy Amerina. It was so big, and it really looked like a monkey's head. It was really scary to see it from a distance. This thing is not common. He had only eaten it a few times in China. This time he was in for a treat. Dale walked up and looked at the mushroom in Kinzu's hand. He was relieved and asked curiously, "Clean, what is this? It looks so strange." "This is Heresy Amerina, also known as Heresy Amerina. It is an edible fungus. The wild ones are especially delicious. I haven't eaten much in China. This big Heresy Amerina is wild. You're in for a treat today," Kinzu explained to Dale. After that, he didn't care about her confused expression, and walked back with the huge Heresy Amerina. They were not too far away, and Anna and others heard their conversation. When Kinzu came back, no one was afraid anymore, and they all gathered around curiously to see such a magical Heresy Amerina. It's really a mushroom. The name is so vivid. It really looks like a monkey head. I was scared to death. Irza pinched the Heresium with her hand as if she didn't believe what she saw, and then she said in surprise. I looked at this silly girl speechlessly. She didn't believe what I said. If you don't believe me, don't eat at noon. After putting away the Heresium, Kinzu led everyone to move forward. After more than half an hour, after harvesting a few more prey, Kinzu announced the return trip amid the laughter of everyone. When they returned, Kinzu and his group already had 3 hares and 5 pheasants in their hands. They were all harvested by Anna and Irza. Poor Kinzu only fired 1 shot, and it was a blank shot. Because the damn hare suddenly turned around, it just scared the rabbit away. But it was also unlucky for it, because it ran in front of the Australian Shepherd in a panic. Of course, the Australian Shepherd would not be polite to it. It was embarrassing for the man, not the dog. It pounced on the poor guy and threw him to the ground, unable to move. The women next to them were stunned, but Kinzu reacted and ran to pick up the silly rabbit. After all, it was his harvest. Hey, Clean, how was your harvest? We shot 2 pheasants and 5 rabbits. Just after returning to the camp, Maxis, who had returned, showed off to Kinzu with a proud face. Anna was about to speak when she heard it, but she didn't expect that there was someone faster than it. Ha ha, Maxis, you'll lose. We shot 5 pheasants, and we also shot 3 rabbits. Isa said proudly before Anna, and showed the prey in her hand to Maxis. Looking at the prey in the hands of Isa and Anna, Maxis was depressed. This was unfair. They caught more pheasants, but he caught more rabbits. Logically, there should be more rabbits than pheasants, so he won. Well, that's it. After comforting himself, Maxis changed the subject and looked at Kinzu and said, Clean, what are we going to eat for lunch? Grilled or fried? Kinzu smiled mysteriously, took out the heresy American voice and said, Don't worry, I'll make you delicious food for lunch. As Kinzu expected, 2 screams came from the temporary camp. Maxis and Ollie looked at Kinzu in horror, and even Rayleigh and Sammy looked reluctant. They knew that billionaires had some quirks. Sure enough, this guy was so cruel. Looking at the horrified expressions of the eldest and second sisters, Anna couldn't help but chuckle. Seeing them looking at her like a madman, Anna completely forgot how embarrassed she was just now. While laughing, she explained, Big sister, second sister, this is a kind of mushroom, okay? What are you thinking? Maxis looked at Anna in disbelief. This girl doesn't have a fever, right? That's clearly a monkey's head, how could it be a mushroom? But Anna next to her let out a her. She felt something was wrong. Why was there no blood? Slowly approaching Kinzu's hand, she gently touched the heresy American voice with her hand. With her mouth wide open in disbelief, Ola looked back at Maxis and said, Maxis, come and see, this is really a mushroom. Hearing this, Maxis turned her head to look at Rayleigh, who walked over slowly and pinched it with his hand. He nodded at Maxis in surprise and said, It is indeed a mushroom, it's incredible. After hearing what her boyfriend said, Maxis walked over doubtfully and touched it gently. Suddenly, he was also surprised and said, No way. It's really a mushroom? There are such magical mushrooms. Where did you find them? Anna smiled and explained what happened just now. Now everyone was relieved, and they all sighed at the magic of nature, and then began to look forward to the feast that Kinzu said. Old friends, Xiao 46, Hengdeo Duai, Quanglam, crying and laughing under the fireworks, Elf Little Blood-In, Yuan oh, I'm the legendary Simic I am, Fingliu Hai Xiao, Angry Pumpkin, Relaxed, Homeman God Emperor, Z3, 4, 5, 1, 6, 9, 4, Crack vs Crab, Crazy, Wind Passing with Clouds, Simple Millimeter, Nothingness. Chairs, sheep driving wolves, Xiao's food battle, lights to see people, wind blowing, lucky, leaning on the fence to look at the moon one, colorless and tasteless with color and taste, the Huan B, 10 years old bug, I'm a bookworm Q, Zinbi, Bokaba, Dekin little soldier, Wamanx U, Ko 8, 7, 0, 5, 1, 3, hopeless and meaningless, endless vicissitudes, Jiu's ailing, cold-blooded and proud, the moonlight under the bed, the divine wall of Gundam, 2 little book fans, the kitten in the coal pile, the wind blows, it is so difficult to remove a name, professional spare tire repair, your beloved, book friend 1, 4, 0, 5, 1, 2, wandering alone in the rainy night, stupid man, book friend 1, 5, 0, 1, 1, 5, 0, 1, 0, 5, Kim singing wildly, supernatural power will be, Vishus, Donald Merlin, W158, oh boy, do you think, Wi-Fi can't stand you, love is you and me, dream journey, sword swinging, can I love you? Dongzun's Husk WH, classmate HGB, star of the Sea Dragon, I'm leisurely, eternity, stewing chaos, sleeping 3 times in 1 second, flying sword at the corpse driver, Kaiwan expedition, drunk fish and catfishing, can they like, Dark Cross, look at the stars when you have time, Gu, love Kiki, the indifferent person, flowers bloom and silence, limited number of words, and some friends' names are not included. Are you still paying attention to this book? Chapter 83 Beggar's Chicken. At this time, John, who heard the sound, also put down the prey and walked over. Looking at the huge heresium in Kinzu's hand, he said in surprise, Clean, you're really lucky. There are not many of this thing here. Kinzu was a little surprised. Foreigners also know this thing. He quickly asked, John, do you eat this here? Of course, such a delicious and nutritious thing, how can we not eat it? John looked at Kinzu with some surprise. Kinzu was a little embarrassed. He thought that only people in China like to eat this. Come to think of it, good things are popular wherever they go. Because it was getting late, Kinzu Dale watched here, and he and John and Riley Sammy went to the stream to deal with the prey and prepare today's lunch. The clear water in the stream was still flowing slowly. At this time, there were no deer drinking water, and it seemed particularly quiet and peaceful. However, with the arrival of Kinzu and his companions, the clear lake water became a little turbid. John cooked the game one by one, while Riley and Sammy cleaned them. Some of the internal organs were buried directly on the spot. Kinzu looked a little sorry. Although he knew that Americans basically did not eat animal organs, he ate them. It was just that the conditions were simple and it was inconvenient to clean them, so he gave up. Everyone else was busy, but Kinzu was a little idle. There was no way. Who made him the boss? John would definitely not let him do it. Riley and the others also rushed to do things. The gentlemanly demeanor was fully reflected in these two people. It was just a little bit of a submissive tendency. Kinzu curled his lips and complained in his heart. Seeing that there was nothing to do here, Kinzu started playing with mud. The three busy people stopped and looked at the rancher Kin, who was playing with mud. Kinzu ignored the different looks behind him. After preparing the mud, he went to a nearby banana tree to get a few large leaves. After he saw that John and the others had finished their work, he returned to the camp with them. John seemed to be hesitant to speak all the way, which made Kinzu anxious for him, so he took the initiative to explain. Don't guess, I'm preparing a special dish. In our family, only some legendary masters can eat it. After saying that, he ignored the increasingly happy expressions of John and the other two, and smiled and walked ahead. After returning to the camp, he found that the women had already lit the fire, but why was there only one fire? This was not enough. After asking Eva to make another fire, Kinzu began to prepare the seasoning. John was in charge of the barbecue today. In addition to the barbecue, Kinzu was also going to show off his skills to open the eyes of these foreigners. There were a total of 7 pheasants. Kinzu took 2 of them, and prepared 1 for soup and 4 for barbecue. But he thought again, there are 10 people now, with his cooking skills, it must be delicious, don't let himself not eat it. So he went to get another one, and roasted 3, anyway there are 8 wild rabbits. He stuffed the prepared pepper, star anise, ginger, salt, cooking wine and so on into the chicken's stomach, and then rubbed a thick layer of butter on the chicken, and wrapped it with banana leaves. Including Eva, everyone looked at Kinzu curiously, but Isa was impatient, pursed her sexy red lips, and couldn't help asking the question that everyone wanted to know now, Clean, what are you doing? Don't worry, you'll know when it's done, it's hard to explain now. After tying up the remaining 2 pheasants in the same way, Kinzu smiled mysteriously. It's not that he likes to keep people in suspense, but how can he tell it? Can he tell them the story of home cooking again? After chopping a pheasant and putting it in the pot, he took the 3 wrapped pheasants and walked towards the place where he had played in the mud just now. When Kinzu came back again, everyone saw him holding 3 mud-like objects in his hands. But this time everyone was smart, no one asked, just watched silently. After burying the 3 pheasants covered with mud in the burning fire, Kinzu clapped his hands, stood up, and prepared to start the next dish. This one was relatively simple. The chicken was already in the pot, and he just needed to put the hericium in and cook it together. He was busy here, and John was not idle either. There were already a few hares roasting on the grill. Kinzu took a deep breath and seemed to be able to smell the tempting aroma. Eva and Anna and a few other girls were making fruit salads on the side. They were all Kinzu asked Riley to carry with him in the morning, and now they were finally put to use. After waiting for a while, Kinzu put the hericium in. Not long after he put it down, a tempting aroma came to his face. Smelling the refreshing fragrance, Anna, who had just finished making the salad, couldn't help but take a deep breath, and even her throat moved involuntarily. She looked at the iron pot that was constantly emitting steam with some surprise, and murmured, "What a nice smell." John, who was turning the roasted rabbit, also took a deep breath and said, "I haven't smelled this familiar smell for a long time. Boss, your cooking skills are great." Then he gave Kinzu a thumbs up. Kinzu accepted John's praise without hesitation. Looking at the roasted rabbit sizzling on the grill and smelling the unique aroma of barbecue, Kinzu smiled and said, "John, your barbecue skills are also great. I can't help but want to try it." "Ha, of course, don't worry, it will be ready soon and you can eat it in a while." John sprinkled some cumin on the roasted rabbit that was emitting the aroma of meat, then took it and put it on a plate aside and said, "Okay, guys, try it first." Old John's homemade roasted rabbit meat. After saying that, he raised his eyebrows proudly. Kinzu took it without hesitation, and after asking everyone to spread the picnic cloth, he began to cut the roasted golden rabbit with a knife and fork. After asking everyone to do it themselves, Kinzu picked up a piece of hind leg and started to gnaw it directly. It was crispy on the outside and tender on the inside, fragrant and delicious. In a few minutes, only a pile of skeletons were left of the wild rabbit. Several people licked their mouths with satisfaction, looking unsatisfied. John looked very satisfied. Although he didn't get to eat it, he was still very happy to see everyone's recognition of his cooking skills. After finishing the second roast rabbit, the remaining roast rabbit would take a while. Kinzu saw that his heresy Marinacy voice stewed with pheasant was ready to be served, so he found disposable bowls and chopsticks and gave everyone a bowl to try. At the same time, he also turned out the clot of earth that had been roasted in the fire for nearly an hour and let it cool down for a while. "Thank you for your support from I Want to Wake Up the World and Fensksil Love. Liuun will be on vacation in a few days. At the time, I will definitely update more to thank you for your kindness. Thank you again to the big guys who have been voting for recommendations. Thank you." The warm sunlight shone through the trees, and sprinkled on the people who were eating with their mouths full of oil. It was warm but not scorching. On the small grass in the woods, there was a sky blue picnic cloth, and 10 men and women sat around it. Next to it were 2 burning fires. "Clean, your cooking skills are really great, even better than those made by chefs," Anna said with an intoxicated look on her face after taking a sip of the boiling hot chicken soup. Before Kinzu had time to be humble, he heard Isa yelling, "Is it so delicious? Isn't it just pheasant stewed with mushrooms? What kind of cooking skills are needed? I can do it." After saying that, she also lowered her head and took a sip of chicken soup. The golden chicken soup looked a little greasy, but after entering the mouth, a fresh fragrance came, and it didn't feel greasy at all. Unconvinced, he picked up a piece of heresy Marinacy voice with a fork and blew it on his lips, then put it in his mouth and chewed it gently. After a while, Isa looked at Kinzu in a daze. "This is not scientific. I didn't see what he put in it. It was just ordinary seasonings. How could the soup stewed with pheasant and mushrooms be so delicious?" Kinzu picked up the steaming chicken soup in front of him, took a sip, and said with a smile, "This soup is delicious, all thanks to the heresy Marinacy voice. This heresy Marinacy voice, also known as monkey head fungus, is named because of its appearance that resembles a monkey head." Seeing that everyone was still confused, Kinzu had no choice but to continue to explain. Heresy Marinacy voice is a traditional and precious dish in China. The meat is tender, the taste is fragrant, and it is delicious. The 4 traditional famous dishes are monkey head, pepper, sea cucumber, and shark fin. Monkey head is one of them. It is known as mountain treasure monkey head and sea delicacy shark fin. Now everyone felt a little enlightened. Did they understand? Of course not, they just heard that this thing is also very precious in China. Since it is precious, it is natural that it is delicious. Kinzu didn't know what they were thinking. After drinking the chicken soup, he couldn't wait to get the beggar's chicken. Seeing Kinzu start to make the next dish, everyone including John rushed over and surrounded Kinzu, watching him break the charred mud and take out the pheasant wrapped in banana leaves. Suddenly, a meaty aroma with banana leaves came. Anna took a deep breath and felt so fresh, with a little meaty aroma in the freshness. Just smelling it makes people very hungry. After tearing the banana leaves apart skillfully, Kinzu put the pheasant with an attractive aroma on the plate and began to disassemble it. When Anna tasted the pheasant meat with a faint fragrance and fact but not greasy, she no longer cared to talk to Kinzu and started a battle for food with the girls. Until the end, only the bones of the 3 beggar chickens were left, and almost 5 roasted rabbits were eaten. After drinking a pot of pheasant soup stewed with monkey head mushrooms, this outdoor picnic was finally over. Patting her bloated stomach, Isa lay on the grass and said with great satisfaction, "It's so delicious. I didn't expect to have such delicious food at a picnic." After that, she looked at Kinzu with expectation. "Clean, can we come here often? Your place is really good. People don't want to leave." Anna, who was also lying on the grass motionless to digest the food, teased, If you don't want to leave, don't leave. Keen just needs a servant here. It's just right for you to stay. No, what I need most is a bed warmer. Who of you wants to stay? Come and sign up. Looking at the two high peaks on the grass that were stretched by clothes, Kinzu said with a joking face. At this time, all the women were lying or sitting on the grass, leaving only John and Riley Sammy, the three men, to clean up the mess. You can't throw garbage here, otherwise Kinzu will suffer. Anna and Lisa were lying side by side on the grass, with the mottled sunlight shining on them. The two idiots also rubbed some chicken soup to replenish their bodies, and were playing around the two girls. Anna, who was teasing Xiao Hectares, trembled when she heard Kinzu's words, and almost strangled Xiao Hectares who was playing in her hands. It was not until Xiao Hectares struggled with all four legs that Anna reacted, quickly let go of Xiao Hectares, hugged him in her arms and whispered to comfort him. Isa didn't see Anna's reaction next to her. After hearing what Kinzu said, she laughed and joked. Okay, just leave Anna here, I'll come over occasionally for a few meals. Anna, who had just comforted poor Xiao Hectares, heard her bestie teasing herself. Regardless of the fact that she was still a little full, she turned over and rode on Isa and started to play. As soon as the poor little husky escaped from Anna's clutches, he immediately ran to Kinzu's side to seek comfort. Kinzu couldn't help laughing at his pitiful appearance. He stood up and patted his buttocks. Kinzu said loudly, Anna, stop making trouble. Don't do strenuous exercise after eating. Let's go for a walk to digest the food. After hearing Kinzu's words, Anna climbed up from Isa and stroked her clothes that were a little wrinkled due to the play. She ran away with a smile. In the woods under the sun, the calls of unknown birds were heard from time to time. Walking on the small path in the woods that was trampled by people, there were two identical huskies next to them, and behind them were Anna, Isa, Eva, John and Dale. The other two couples were on the other side, being affectionate with each other. Anyway, there were no big beasts nearby, so there was no need to worry about their safety. The two idiots who were walking suddenly accelerated and rushed in front of Kinzu. Their small bodies pressed down and made a childish low roar. Even the usually soft white hair stood up at this time, as if it had turned into a hedgehog. Before Kinzu could react, Dale had already opened the safety of the M16, loaded the bullet, rushed to Kinzu with the gun, pointed the gun in front of Kinzu, and signaled Kinzu and others to retreat. John was not much slower than Dale, holding the Remington to protect Kinzu's right side, scanning the woods on both sides. Only then did Kinzu react. It seemed that something in front was discovered by the idiots, and it looked very powerful. The husky, who never knew what danger was scared like this. However, Kinzu was still very relieved. Although they were scared like this, Daha and Xiaohe still rushed in front of Kinzu and did not run away with their tails between their legs. This courage and act of protecting the master deserves praise. Compared with Kinzu, who can still be distracted and have wild thoughts until now, Dale is under great pressure at this time. As the saying goes, the unknown is the most terrifying. The thing ahead is obviously very dangerous, as it can scare the husky from the civilized world like this. But what is it? Looking at the bushes in the distance, Dale hesitated. She exchanged a glance with John, motioned him to stay here to protect the boss, and she would go over to take a look. Unexpectedly, John shook his head. How could he let himself watch a grown-up child go? He motioned her to stay here to protect Kinzu, and he slowly moved forward. Thank you Fengzi for your reward and support, and Happy Little New Year. Today is Little New Year's Eve. Considering Liu's hard work in writing until now, please give me some rewards and recommendations to support me. I wish all book friends a Happy Little New Year's Eve. Si este escuchando esta novela en un canal distinto a mundo fanfic novelas, significat lo descarga and y subir en cines fuerzos invitamos cordialmente a visitar nuestro canal. Mundo fanfic novelas all encontrar la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos narradores. Te esperamos para sumergirte en un mundo de novelas increíbles. Chapter 85 The Injured Squirrel. Seeing that John had already touched him, Dale could only stay where he was and be on guard helplessly. John held the Remington and approached the dense bushes in front of him cautiously. As John slowly moved forward, the shadowy bushes in front of him suddenly swayed violently, making a wonderful rustling sound, like the howling of a wild beast. John was so scared that he froze there immediately, not daring to move. What was going on? Was there a big guy behind him? After a long time, the rustling sound became smaller and gradually faded away, farther and farther, until it could no longer be heard. The state of Daha and Xiaohe also gradually eased, and their snow-white hair became soft again. And they showed that stupid expression again, which made Qinzu feel painful. Until then, feeling that the unknown creature behind him gradually disappeared, John dared to slowly move forward to see what was going on. Seeing that his state had returned to normal, Dale also put down the M16 that he had been holding, and followed with everyone. Soon, Qinzu and the girls came to the bushes, pushed aside the bushes and walked in. The bushes were in a mess, as if something had pressed a path out of them. It led straight to the depths of the woods, close to the sea. John was looking around at this time, squatting down from time to time to look carefully at the pressed path, as if observing something. "Hey, man, did you see it? What happened here?" Seeing John's thoughtful expression, Qinzu asked directly. "Nothing has been found for the time being, but a little guy was found on it." John shrugged, obviously not wanting to say more, and changed the subject by pointing to a big tree next to him that could be hugged by one person, and said to Qinzu, "This is a common pine tree, about 5 or 6 meters high, with countless branches on the thick trunk, with green branches and leaves, like a huge umbrella. When the breeze blows, the treetops sway gently, as if dancing." "But what is the little guy John is talking about?" Qinzu was confused. He couldn't figure out what he meant. At this time, Dale next to him gently touched him with her shoulder. Seeing Qinzu turned around, Dale raised her chin and motioned Qinzu to look over there. Following Dale's line of sight, Qinzu looked up, but unfortunately he still saw nothing. "No, what is that?" What appeared in Qinzu's sight was a big red tail. Looking up along the tail, Qinzu finally found out what the little guy John was talking about was. This is a little squirrel with fiery red hair. At this time, it was hiding behind a branch, looking at Qinzu and his group timidly with its pair of black little eyes. At this time, its condition seemed not very good. It was lying on that branch, and its big tail drooped weakly, so it could be discovered by people. It seems to be injured. At this time, Anna also found this poor guy, but women's minds are still more careful than men. Found that there was something wrong with this little guy, and asked Qinzu some doubts. Qinzu heard this, and looked at this carefully again, looking at his little guy with a pair of innocent eyes. "It seems to be injured, the leg is injured." Qinzu nodded affirmatively. He found that the little guy had not moved for a long time, and just lay there looking at them. "Clean, can you save it?" Isa couldn't bear to watch it anymore, just because the little thing's eyes were too lethal. So she turned her head to look at Qinzu and begged in a low voice. Qinzu was not a heartless person. Seeing the pitiful little eyes and the helplessness of being unable to move, his heart softened immediately. Handing the remnant in his hand to Wanna, Qinzu rolled up his sleeves, climbed up the tree in a few steps, and came to the poor little guy. Perhaps because Qinzu himself had an affinity for animals, seeing Qinzu coming to him, the little guy was not afraid, but felt happy. Maybe he also knew that he would not die this time. Looking at the squirrel's fluffy tail swinging weakly, Qinzu gently picked it up, put it in the mountaineering bag brought by John, and ran down the tree again. Just when Qinzu picked up the little guy, he found that its foot was injured. Just as he was about to take it out and carefully check whether it was seriously injured, he heard John's voice beside him. "Boss, let's go back first. It's dangerous here. Let's go back first." Looking up at John's serious expression, Qinzu knew that he was not joking. There might really be something dangerous nearby, so he didn't waste any words. After putting the little guy steadily in the bag, he simply got up and walked back with a few people. The women didn't say anything. Now their minds were all on the little guy. Qinzu and Dale were in front, and John was behind. Qinzu and the others quickly returned to the temporary camp safely. The two couples were still flirting in the distance. Qinzu packed up his things and asked Anna to call them back, preparing to return to the ranch. Soon Matties and Dollar came back. They didn't ask much. After packing up their things, they followed Qinzu and walked back to the ranch. Qinzu carefully protected the little guy in the backpack. There were too many people now, so there was no chance to strengthen him. He could only let him hold on for a few more days and strengthen him when there were fewer people, so as not to appear abrupt. The few of them walked in silence to the place where the four-wheel motorcycles were parked. When they arrived here, John visibly breathed a sigh of relief. He smiled and said, "Okay, guys, you can slow down now. It should be fine. I was just afraid of danger just now." "Hey, John, what was that just now?" Qinzu was very curious. How did John determine that it was a dangerous guy? "Boss, did you see the pressed road? What does it look like?" John looked at Kinzu with some fear and asked. Pressed road. What does it look like? Could it be? Kinzu was a little confused and looked at John and said, John, are you saying there are snakes nearby? John nodded and added, and it's not small. Did you see the width of the road? Thinking about the path that was more than 20 centimeters wide, Kinzu was horrified. How big should it be? What would have happened if John had gone there earlier and appeared in front of it? Kinzu didn't dare to think about it anymore. Why would there be such a big thing nearby? And why did it appear there? He looked at the fiery red squirrel in the backpack in the middle. Could it be because of this guy? Liu-un went to buy things for the new year today. So I'm a few minutes late today. Sorry. Chapter 86 North American Red Squirrel. Seeing the little squirrel in pain, Kinzu remembered its injuries. He cursed himself for being careless and quickly handed it to Anna, asking her to hold the little guy on the four-wheeled motorcycle. He wanted to ride a horse, so he didn't want to hurt it more. After Anna took the little guy and put him in a safe place, Kinzu raised his hand and blew a long whistle. As soon as the whistle sounded, Xiaobai came out of the woods with 2 spotted horses. After calling Xiaobai over, Kinzu climbed on the horse and led a few people to end this unique picnic and head to the ranch. The afternoon sun shone warmly on the ranch. In the ranch, the half-man-high purple clover fluttered in the wind. At this time, the loud neighing of the horse came from not far away. With the sound of motorcycle engines, Kinzu and his party appeared in front of the villa. When they arrived at the door, Kinzu got off the horse, patted Xiaobai's head, and let it move freely. He took Anna, who also looked anxious, to the villa. After entering the villa, Kinzu hurriedly ran straight to the room, took out the medical bag from the room, and hurried back to the living room. Anna had already taken the little squirrel out of the bag and put it on the sofa. After leaving Kinzu's side, the little guy seemed a little shy and resisted Anna's manipulation. Kinzu saw this and quickly sat down on the sofa, stroking the little squirrel's hair with his hand. After a while, the little squirrel, which was a little restless, calmed down. Anna was a little jealous. How come she had been holding the little squirrel all the way, but she didn't see how affectionate the little squirrel was to her. But this was obviously not the time to tangle with this. Anna gently moved the little squirrel's fluffy tail away. Now both of them could clearly see that one of the little squirrel's hind legs was obviously swinging irregularly. Anna covered her mouth with heartache and looked at Kinzu a little at a loss. Kinzu also scratched his head for a while. He really didn't know how to treat a disease, especially setting bones for small animals. But this did not bother him. He hid his anxiety and smiled calmly at Anna, saying, "It's okay. This will not bother me. My family is a hereditary veterinarian. Leave it to me. Go prepare some pine cones for it first and feed it later." After saying that, he looked at everyone who had entered the living room and was watching them, and then continued, "Everyone go to the side to rest, don't gather here, don't disturb me." Seeing Kinzu's confident look, Anna was relieved and asked the onlookers to go aside so that they would not disturb Kinzu's treatment. Seeing that everyone had gone aside, Kinzu was relieved. It was a joke. How could he have any medical skills? How could he save people with a group of you around him? Oh, no, how could he save the squirrel? Looking at the little squirrel that didn't listen to the humming, Kinzu directly used a gene enhancement on it. The little squirrel that was humming suddenly froze there, as if its mind suddenly became clear. Looking at the human in front of him with some horror, what did he do to him? Why can't it move? Kinzu looked at the little guy's smart eyes and couldn't help but smile with satisfaction. After a while, it seemed that it could move. The little squirrel was relieved. When it was about to run away, it suddenly felt that its leg that was broken because of running away didn't seem to hurt now. Confusedly looking at the guy in front of it that made it feel close, could it be because of him? Feeling the little squirrel in his hand move, Kinzu knew that the strengthening was over. After putting it back on the sofa, he pretended to apply some medicine to it, and then wrapped the injured left leg with a bandage for several circles. Looking at his masterpiece, Kinzu was ashamed. He really doesn't know how to bandage, so he can only make do with this. Anyway, I can say that I studied traditional Chinese medicine, so I can explain why I can't bandage. The little squirrel was a little depressed. I just got rid of the status of a patient. As a result, it was tied up again, which made it even more inconvenient to move. Pinching the squirrel's fluffy tail, Kinzu looked at its pitiful and aggrieved look. Kinzu smiled and said beside it, "Little guy, stay still, your leg is just fine. If you move around, be careful not to break it again." After that, regardless of whether it could understand or not, he directly performed an identification spell on it. North American red squirrel quality. Silver level constitution. 10 strength. 12 agility. 20 skills. Jump LV1 growth potential. 4 stars not bad attributes, suitable for being a pet. Kinzu thought a little proudly. Don't even think about whether a normal person's attributes can compare to this mutant little squirrel. Holding the still confused little guy and walking towards the crowd, Kinzu looked at its big teeth that were shining coldly. He whispered in its ear and threatened. Little guy, you be obedient. If you dare to bite people, I will show you how to deal with you. It nodded its head a little aggrieved, although squirrels have no human rights. Thinking that this guy made her unable to move for no reason, her little heart was filled with shadows. When she came to the crowd, Kinzu put the little guy with his left leg wrapped like his own Xi on the coffee table. Look, isn't it healed now? You can remove the bandage in 2 days. Anna looked at the little squirrel that was almost half wrapped in the daze. After confirming that it was fine, she said speechlessly, Clean, if I didn't know that it was injured in the leg. I thought it was paralyzed. Looking at the people around who agreed, Kinzu smiled awkwardly. Well, you know, I know our traditional Chinese medicine. So I'm not familiar with these bandages. After hearing what he said, everyone's attention was really not on the bandage. Kinzu, who successfully changed the topic, couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Clean, are you going to adopt it? Isa looked at the cute little squirrel on the side and looked at Kinzu with some expectation. If she wasn't still a student, she really wanted to take this fiery red little guy home to raise herself. Yes, such a poor little guy, and no one knows where its parents are. If it is sent back to the wild now, it will probably not live long. Kinzu looked at the little squirrel, which was less than 20 centimeters long. It was still a little guy now. That's great, so it can rest here and recuperate. Isa said excitedly, looking very happy. It can be seen that this is also a kind girl. Anna took out a bag of nuts from the side and tore open the package. She poured some out of it, put it in her hand and was about to feed it to the little guy. My friend's new book, I'm the Supreme God, has a very cool name. Friends who like this kind of book can go and have a look. By the way, I would like to ask for a recommendation. It's a new week again. Chapter 87 Jerry. Kinzu was shocked when he saw Anna trying to feed the squirrel with nuts. This guy had just been transformed and couldn't control his strength. If he accidentally bit it, it would be a big deal. He quickly stopped her and said, No, Anna, put it on the coffee table and let it eat it by itself. It would be bad if it accidentally hurts you. Anna looked at the cute little squirrel. It didn't look like it would bite people, did it? But since Kinzu said so, she put the nuts in her hand on the coffee table. Be good, go eat it quickly. After saying this to the little squirrel, she sat back on the sofa and looked at it expectantly. The little squirrel didn't let her down. He lowered his head and picked up a walnut with his 2 little paws. He opened his pink little mouth and showed his 2 big front teeth. He didn't see how hard he tried, just gently touched his upper lip with his lower lip. The hard shell of the walnut was bitten in half by it. Anna looked at the little squirrel eating the walnut happily in a daze. Turning to Kinzu, he said, Clean, what kind of monster did you bring back? Why are its teeth so sharp? Rubbing her hair foolishly, Isa muttered to herself, Oh my god. Is that still a walnut? Of course it's a walnut. If you don't believe me, come and try it. Kinzu pointed to the plastic bag that had just been opened. Kinzu was just talking casually. Of course, he knew why it was so easy for the little squirrel to eat walnuts. But Isa, this silly girl, actually took a walnut. Before Kinzu could react, Isa had already put the walnut into her mouth. With a little force, she heard a ouch. From the other side. Covering his head with his hands, Kinzu looked at Isa, who looked at him speechlessly. He didn't expect that this girl could be so stupid. The people who were standing aside were a little surprised that the little squirrel could eat walnuts so easily. Suddenly, there was a burst of laughter. At this time, Isa came back to her senses and looked at everyone with a red face, not knowing what to say. He touched his mouth, which was still a little painful from the shock. He didn't expect that he would be stupid sometimes. This little guy doesn't have a name yet. Let's think about what to name it. Seeing Isa's embarrassed look, Kinzu quickly spoke up to help. Isa, who was relieved, looked at Kinzu with some gratitude. He said, Clean, do you know its gender? This is a male North American red squirrel. Kinzu nodded and said. He saw it when he was tying the bandage just now. It was a man with a penis. How about calling it Jerry? Anna spoke first. But Maxis immediately retorted, no, that's the name of a mouse. It's better to call it Henry. O'Leary also expressed her opinion on the side, how about calling it Koala? Looking at the three people arguing endlessly, and looking at Isa, who seemed very interested and eager to try, Kinzu quickly interrupted and said, okay, let's call him Jerry. They are all rats anyway, so let's call him that. Since Kinzu, the owner, had spoken, Maxis and Ola could only shut up in dismay. Seeing Anna's smug look, they were so angry that their teeth itched. Several people had been playing with Jerry in the villa for more than an hour, and little Jerry had finally adapted to the new environment. He had a good relationship with the two huskies, and they looked very happy. Anna looked at the time. It was already past 4 in the afternoon, and she screamed, ah! It's past 4 o'clock, Maxis, we should go back. The girls also looked at the time. Maxis stood up and said, it's so late, we should go back. Let's all go pack up. Anna looked at Kinzu and said embarrassedly, Clean, I'm sorry to trouble you to send us back again. It's okay, you guys go pack up first, I'll go drive. Seeing that everyone went upstairs to pack up, Kinzu called Dale. They went out to the garage together. When Kinzu and Dale drove the car to the door, everyone was already waiting. Just like when they came, Kinzu drove the McLaren with Anna, and the group slowly left the ranch in the afterglow of the sunset. Leon is patching a train back to his hometown today. In order to keep updating, he got some at the train station. He will take a train for a whole day tomorrow, and will make up for it when he gets home the day after tomorrow. I hope you can understand and ask for recommendations. Chapter 88 Return to School. Facing the afterglow of the setting sun, the blue McLaren drove on the road leading to Highway 94 from the ranch. On both sides of the road were endless purple alfalfa fluttering in the wind, creating waves of grass in the vast ranch. The loud noise of the car engine startled Shiabai, who was leisurely eating grass with his friends in the distance. He looked up and saw that his master had gone out again without him. He looked up and snorted, venting his dissatisfaction with his master. Then he continued to eat the delicious grass. In the car, Kinzu looked at Anna with a smile on his face and asked, Anna, how is it? Did you have fun these 2 days? Of course, Clean, I had a lot of fun these 2 days. Everything in the ranch is so new. Anna said excitedly. It can be seen that she is in a very happy mood now. Ha, that's because you have never been to the ranch before. If you stay there every day, you will not feel novel, but bored. Kinzu said with a smile after holding the steering wheel and carefully avoiding a white-tailed deer crossing the road. When driving in the United States, you also need to pay attention to these wild animals running rampant. You can often see them in groups in the wild, crossing the highway in a mighty manner. Anna looked at Kinzu thoughtfully. Is this why you invited us to play? It's unfair, I invited you to be my friends. Kinzu shouted with a face full of injustice, but at this time he was indeed muttering in his heart. It is said that women have a strong sixth sense, and this time I have experienced it. Time passed quickly while talking and laughing. It should have taken about an hour to get there, but Kinzu felt that they had arrived in the blink of an eye. McLaren and Knight the 15th stopped at the gate of Harvard University one after another. After opening the car door and getting out of the car, Kinzu took Anna's things from the car and handed them to her, who was standing beside her. Clean, thank you very much for your hospitality these 2 days. I hope I will have the opportunity to visit you next time. Anna took the things and said to Kinzu with a smile. After that, she gently left a pink lip print on Kinzu's face. Feeling the soft touch on his cheek, Kinzu was slightly distracted. He was a little eager to try. However, looking at the bustling century-old school, he and others were still at the door. Seeing Anna turn around and reunite with Matties and others, Kinzu was a little itchy, this little goblin. He hugged Isa and the other girls one by one, feeling the strengths of each of them. Of course, Rayleigh and Sammy were not left out, so he couldn't expose his evil intentions. Watching everyone walk into the school gate, Kinzu waved to them again, opened the car door, got in the car and returned directly to the ranch. It was almost 6 o'clock and the weather was a little dim. The wide and straight Interstate 94 was empty, without a single car. Suddenly, 2 dazzling white lights suddenly appeared on the originally lonely highway. Along with Taylor Swift's sexy voice, a dazzling blue McLaren came with 2 headlights on. Kinzu drove the McLaren on the highway at dusk, listening to Taylor Swift's sexy voice on the radio. Kinzu slowly increased the speed of the McLaren to nearly 200 yards. After an hour's journey, Kinzu returned to the ranch in 20 minutes. Fortunately, it was night and he was not spotted by the traffic police. After returning to the ranch, he parked his car. He did not wait for Dale and returned to the villa first. As soon as he entered the door, a fiery red figure flashed before Kinzu's eyes. Before he could react, Jerry, the little thing, had already stood steadily on his shoulder. The fluffy big tail was still moving behind his neck, making him a little itchy. He stroked Jerry's little head with his hand, feeling its closeness to him, and Kinzu's originally restless heart calmed down. But looking at the little Jerry who was still alive and kicking with the bandages tied around him, Kinzu looked around the living room with a guilty conscience. Fortunately, there was no one there, and Dale was still behind him. If he was seen, he would definitely be exposed. Jerry sat on his shoulder, and Daha and Xiaohe followed at his feet. Kinzu returned to the sofa in the living room and sat down, carrying little Jerry in front of him, staring at this cute little squirrel. Kinzu didn't care whether it could understand or not, and whispered, "Little guy, you have to remember. You're injured now, and you can't jump around. Do you hear me?" Little Jerry's originally cheerful expression suddenly became depressed. What kind of person is this? How can a mouse pretend to be injured? But the mouse has to bow its head under the eaves. He could only silently jump off Kinzu's shoulder and curl up on the sofa, pretending to be inconvenient to move. Seeing this guy looking like he had suffered a great injustice, Kinzu laughed. He rubbed his drooping little head to comfort him. "Clean, what do you want to eat tonight?" Eva asked as she came out of the kitchen wearing a sky blue apron. Kinzu ate too much at noon, so he didn't feel very hungry now. Besides, he didn't feel like doing lunch, so he asked Eva to make some food. After eating, Kinzu ended to make milk powder for Dio and Xiao who were wandering around on the sofa. After that, he poured some into the bowls of the two guys. The two guys were eating happily, but Kinzu frowned as he looked at them. After going crazy all day today, the two snow-white huskies were almost like little flower dogs. And the little Jerry, who was holding a walnut in his two little paws and chewing it comfortably, had a beautiful fiery red fur when he first saw it, but now it has become a little dull. But who can blame this guy for being injured now, so he can only let it get dirty for 2 days. Kinzu shrugged, put the little Jerry on his shoulder to let it hold it firmly, then picked up a husky in one hand and said hello to the two girls. He took the idiots to take a bath. He put little Jerry, who couldn't take a bath, into the doghouse first, and let the 3 of them sleep together today. The idiot went to the bathroom with satisfied expressions on their faces. He entered the bathroom, put the water in place, and then put the 2 idiots in. Fortunately, the idiots didn't resist taking a bath. Instead, they looked like masters and waited for Kinzu to serve them. Kinzu felt annoyed. Who is the boss? He washed off the foam on Daha and Xiaohe, and dried their bodies with a dry towel. He also used a hairdryer to dry their pure white dog hair one by one to prevent the 2 uncles from catching a cold. After working for more than half an hour, he finally served the 2 uncles comfortably. He put the 2 satisfied idiots back into the doghouse, and didn't care about little Jerry who was aggrieved on the side. Kinzu patted his butt and went to wash himself. Thank you to the warmth of the soul for the reward of 999 book coins, thank you to Fengxiai for the reward, and thank you all for your recommendation votes. After a whole day of sitting on the train, I finally arrived home. I took a shower and got ready for bed. I am so tired. Chapter 89 New pasture. In the early morning, the warm sunshine once again splashed on the ranch. There was no cloud in the sky, and it was clear that it was another beautiful sunny day. In the grazing area not far away, the Black Angus cattle were leisurely nibbling on the delicious alfalfa in the sun. They had been hungry all night, so they had to eat more to make up for it. On the other side, the merino sheep, led by several divine beasts, were also enjoying their breakfast not far from the herd. Several Australian cattle dogs were scattered around, watching the herd of cattle and sheep with great energy. John was riding on a quarter horse with some chestnut on its hooves and neck, but the rest was black. He was watching them not far from the herd. What a beautiful scene it was. He hadn't seen so many cattle and sheep in a few years. And his favorite horse was one of the horses on the ranch before, although it was just an ordinary spotted horse. But John just liked its gentleness. So it also had a very nice name, Sandra. Yes, it was a gentle mare. Hey, John, go back and have breakfast. I'll take care of this. Ryan's voice suddenly sounded in the distance. He rode a brown quarter and just came back after breakfast. After saying hello to Ryan, John rode Sandra slowly to the farm living area, which had been converted into a canteen by the new boss. His wife Susie no longer had to take care of the ranch work, and now prepared a day's meal for the cowboys here. Praise God, Keen is really a generous boss. John sighed. Yes, John, Keen is really a generous boss. And Susie's cooking skills are not bad. Black Rick heard John sigh, smiled and raised the sandwich in his hand that had been bitten a big bite, and smiled at him. So we should work harder, right? See if there is any ranch nearby that will take care of the cowboys' meals. Hurry up and finish eating, and accompany me to see how the newly sown grass is doing. John said with a serious expression on his face. Reed shrugged and stuck the remaining half of the sandwich into his mouth. He said vaguely, "Okay, Director John, I've already. Please hurry up too." After that, he took another big sip of hot milk to relieve his breath. He choked a little because he ate too fast. Ignoring this black man who was born with a talent for comedy, John walked to the window and took a ham sandwich and a cup of hot coffee. He ate slowly. Keen's ear was awakened by the ringing of the phone. He closed all the curtains yesterday just to sleep in. Unexpectedly, someone came to disturb his sweet dreams so early in the morning. He picked up the phone angrily and saw that it was John. He answered the phone and said with some dissatisfaction, "John, what's the matter so early in the morning?" John didn't hear the wrong tone of his boss. He looked at the large area of emerald green alfalfa in front of him. He said excitedly and incoherently, "Boss, come and see. The grass that was sown a few days ago has grown, and it is growing very well. This grass looks great." Keen's dissatisfaction and tiredness were swept away, and he jumped up from the bed. The three sleeping little guys were scared and stood up. "Really? Wait, I'll be there soon. Go get some cattle and sheep first to see if they like to eat this kind of grass." Keen's didn't wait for John's response after he hung up the phone and ran to the bathroom to wash up. John was a little dazed looking at the phone. He just wanted to remind the boss whether to take the grass for testing. The grass that grew so fast and so well, he was really worried that it might be genetically modified. After taking 5 minutes to take care of his personal hygiene and changing into a denim outfit, Keen's carried the somewhat confused Inch of Jerry and brought Daha and Xiaohe who looked like they hadn't slept well. He came downstairs. Today, I unexpectedly didn't see Eva downstairs. Only Dale was sitting on the sofa in the living room watching TV. Keen's came to the dining table, picked up a sandwich and asked casually, "Dale, where is your Eva? Why don't you see her?" Dale moved her eyes away from the boring TV program, stretched her waist and said, "She went to the cafeteria to help Susie. Only I have nothing to do and can't do anything. I can only stay at home bored." Keen smiled and said, "You'd better not have anything to do, just stay at home honestly. If you have something to do, then I will definitely be in trouble." Keen's handed Daha and Xiaohe to the board. Daha drank the milk in one gulp, took the half-eaten sandwich and went out. When he came to the door of the villa, Xiaobai was already chewing grass on the grass not far away. Keen's was ashamed for a moment, thinking that he was really incompetent as a master. It is estimated that Eva will wash it again today. After a whistle, Xiaobai, who was leisurely nibbling on the fresh grass, immediately moved his ears and raised his head alertly. Seeing that it was Keen's he immediately spread his forehooves and ran over happily. Looking at Xiaobai who was already on a saddle, Keen's once again admired Eva's attentiveness. He stroked Xiaobai's big horse face with his hand and directly jumped on the horse. He galloped towards the depths of the pasture. When Keen's came to John, there were already several half-grown calves frolicking among the newly grown purple clover. Looking at the half-grown Angus cows chewing the new grass with relish, Keen's was excited. "Boss, you are here. It seems that this grass is very popular with these guys." At this time, John, who was watching the calves frolicking on the side, saw Keen's coming and said with a smile, "Well, it looks like the effect is good. We can move all the cattle here." Looking at the endless green purple clover, Keen's was looking forward to it, wondering what kind of surprises the youngest cattle that grew up eating these grasses would bring him. After hesitating for a while, John still said, "Boss, should we take the grass for testing? After all, it is a new variety of grass, and it grows so fast. Will there be any hormones?" Keen's was stunned when he heard this. "What hormones? It is obviously the effect of my improvement. But I can't say this to John." After thinking about it, he said, "How about this? Transfer the cattle first, and as for the grass, we can also test the nutrients it contains. There'll definitely be no hormones, so you can rest assured." John was relieved. He was really afraid that Keen's would be angry. Just now he was doubting the boss's friend, although he was also thinking about the safety of the cattle on the ranch. Chapter 90 Transition. Since the decision had been made to move the pasture, John went to the herd first and prepared to have the cowboys move the herd over. Qinzhou stayed behind and temporarily acted as a cowboy. Although John repeatedly said that it didn't matter whether he was there or not, the cart wouldn't run around. Qinzhou sent the somewhat straightforward old cowboy away with a dark face, and took little Jerry, who had been squatting on his shoulder, for a walk in the pasture. Riding Little White and strolling among the newly grown improved alfalfa, Qinzhou began to consider the feasibility of sowing new varieties of pasture grass. He had no shortage of seeds, but irrigation of the pasture was a big problem. Although it could be done slowly by hand, it would be tiring and the efficiency was unacceptable to Qinzhou. Just as Qinzhou was thinking about it, the gold in his pocket suddenly rang. Little Jerry, who was squatting on his shoulder and chewing walnuts leisurely, was frightened and staggered. He was carried directly to the front. Qinzhou was startled and didn't bother to check his phone. With both hands, he caught it before it fell off the horse. After putting the still confused little Jerry in his arms and patting his head to comfort him, Qinzhou answered the phone. "Boss, come to the grazing area for a while. There is something that needs your attention." As soon as the phone was connected, John's voice came. "What's the matter? What could happen if you just moved to another place?" But it was obviously not clear on the phone. After agreeing, Qinzhou hung up the phone. Looking at the little Jerry who had not yet recovered, he gently patted his head with his hand. He was alert and his little body trembled, and the little guy came back to his senses. Once he recovered, little Jerry immediately began to squeak at Qinzhou, obviously very dissatisfied with Qinzhou for scaring him. He rubbed little Jerry's head with a smile, which was not intentional. He held the little guy and comforted him for a while. He promised to prepare his favorite pine nuts for him when he returned, and the little guy calmed down. Qinzhou smiled helplessly. This is another living ancestor. But thinking about the confused look of this guy just now, he couldn't help laughing. When Qinzhou drove his horse to the grazing area, John had already gathered all the cattle. At this time, tens of thousands of Black Angus cattle gathered in the vast pasture, a dark mass. There was no end in sight. The cowboys had also rushed over at this time. From time to time, you could hear their shouts and the sound of whips waving in the air. Occasionally, a calf would run out of the herd disobediently, and you could see the cowboys performing calf tying on the spot. Seeing Qinzhou come in, John clamped his legs and got off his beloved horse, roped forward and said, "Boss, the distance for the cattle to move is a bit far. If you can go through the pasture next door, it will be a straight line all day, and the distance will be much shorter." Qinzhou frowned slightly. It seemed that the pasture next door was Cade's family's pasture. Although the two knew each other, the concept of private territory in the United States was so strong that how could they allow so many cattle, sheep and cowboys to pass through his territory? John seemed to see Qinzhou's worry and pulled Sandra's reins. He smiled and said, "Boss, don't worry, Kate and the others will agree." He paused, looked at Qinzhou's puzzled eyes, and continued, "This is an old tradition of our cowboys, but their ranch is not big. Once our cattle pass by, there will probably be some losses. We can just compensate them when the time comes." Qinzhou was even more confused and asked in confusion, "Isn't it said that Americans value private territories the most? Why is there still this old tradition?" John shook his head and explained, "That's now. In the past, ranches didn't have much irrigation system. In order to protect the grass, we had to move from one place in the ranch to another every year. Sometimes it happened to be the closest to pass through someone else's ranch, so there was such a tradition." After speaking, John looked at the dark herd of cattle in front of him and sighed deeply. Looking at Qinzhou, he continued, "It's different now. Some wealthy people have bought ranches. They overemphasize the sense of private territory. Now if you want to move to another ranch, you have to pray that the rancher next door is not a rich man." Qinzhou touched his nose awkwardly. He is also a rich man now. But he really doesn't feel much about private territory. He saw an introduction on the internet, saying that private territory in the United States is sacred and inviolable. He thought it has always been like this, who knew that it was made by rich people again? John also realized that he seemed to have said the wrong thing. "Isn't his boss a billionaire?" He quickly explained, "Boss, I'm not talking about you. You are different from those billionaires. We all know that you were a good person." "Well, it's better not to explain." John's explanation made Qinzhou even more depressed. Looking at his somewhat embarrassed expression, he really wanted to spray this old cowboy to death with a mouthful of salt soda. Good man, your sister. Kinzu quickly took out his mobile phone to divert his attention. Otherwise, he would really be hurt. He found Kate's number and dialed it. The call was picked up after just 2 rings. Hi, Clean, you're a rare visitor. What's the matter? Kate greeted him enthusiastically as soon as she opened her mouth. Kinzu felt a little better now. It seems that there are also people who can talk in the United States. He pulled Xiaobao's reins to tell this guy not to be so active. Then he smiled and told Kate the story. Kate agreed immediately after hearing it. After asking Kinzu if he was ready, he said that he was in Revere and would be back soon, so they could set off now. Kinzu was slightly startled, and then he felt that there seemed to be a noise in the microphone, and he could faintly hear the sound of car horns. After agreeing and asking him not to rush and drive slowly, Kinzu hung up the phone. John smiled and asked, "Boss, how is it? Did Kate agree?" Kinzu nodded. Yes, he has agreed, but he is still in Revere and will be home in a while. John shrugged indifferently and rode towards the distant cattle. His voice came from afar. "It's okay, boss, it will take us at least half an hour to get there. The cattle transfer is the most troublesome, especially on such a large scale." Looking at John's sheet back, Kinzu couldn't help but sigh. If it were in China, who would dare to talk to the boss like this? Then he laughed. What happened to him today? He loves to be serious with his subordinates. Was he really stimulated by the good guy card? Today is the second update. Thank you for the reward from 10 years old Bug. Thank you for your support. Chapter 91. The scene is over. He laughed at himself. It was not John's fault. It was because the foreigners did not understand the meaning of the phrase "you were a good person." When you confess your love to the girl you like and hear her say this to you, then congratulations, you don't have to listen to it anymore. Next, you will become a coffee table full of cups. Looking at John's sheet back, Kinzu gently clamped the little white under his crotch, and stopped thinking about his own thoughts. He rode his horse to catch up. Looking at the cowboys, they started working under John's loud shouts. Led by Ryan, Rick and Eva followed, and found some head cows marked with colorful signs and drove them away. Kinzu knew that there would be a leader in every herd of cows. Although these Angus cows are gathered together now, they are actually in groups, eating grass under the leadership of their respective head cows. As for the head cow, the cowboys found it with their sharp eyes and marked it with colorful paint when it just entered the pasture. When grazing, the cowboys only need to drive the head cow, and the rest of the herd will follow the head cow. Otherwise, how can a few cowboys drive such a large herd of 10,000 cows? The huge herd of cattle slowly moved under the drive of the cowboys. It was like a black torrent flowing slowly in the green pasture. Kinzu rode on Xiaobao and helped the cowboys to watch the herd. The cowboys rode on their horses, and their vigorous figures galloped under the morning sun. The leather tassels on the leather trousers floated in the wind like the horse mane under their crotch, and the lasso was raised high in their hands. The shouts of "Har" kept coming out of the cowboys' mouths. Whenever he saw them skillfully use the lasso to knock down those naughty calves one by one, Kinzu's eyes were filled with too big envy. Even Eva and Dale were much better than him. Today, Eva was wearing a tight denim outfit, and her plump upper body was tightly wrapped by the tight denim jacket. Long riding boots wrapped around her slender legs, clamped the horse's belly, and waved a lasso in her slender hands. She was undoubtedly a heroic western cowgirl. In addition, she grew up on a ranch since she was a child, so ranch work was really a piece of cake for her. Dale was a leader in the army. Although she had not done much ranch work, riding a horse and throwing a lasso were not a piece of cake for her, so now she was riding a chestnut quarter horse to help drive a herd of cattle, which seemed relaxed and comfortable. Especially the black leather trousers on her body, which outlined the beautiful curve of her hips. With the tight leather jacket on her upper body, Kinzu was a little dizzy and quickly shifted his sight. The Australian cattle dogs were also very busy at this time, running back and forth non-stop, focusing on those naughty calves. Occasionally, when he found a mischievous person who had strayed from the herd, he would go up and roar. He would also stare at them fiercely with his teeth bared, as if he would bite them if they didn't obey. The poor calves were so scared that they turned around and went back to their mothers, never daring to show their heads again. Kinzu was very satisfied with what he saw, and began to think about when he could find time to strengthen them. If people knew his thoughts, they would spit in his face, making him look very busy and had to find time to do it. I don't know who is wandering around doing nothing every day. In this way, they drove the herd of cattle and walked slowly for nearly half an hour before they arrived at the junction of the pasture. At this time, the fence had already been removed, and the cattle passed through the isolation line unimpeded and entered Kate's pasture. Just a few minutes after walking, Kate was seen riding a chestnut quarter horse and galloping from a distance. When she came closer, Kate pulled the reins. He signaled his beloved horse to slow down, and then looked at the endless herd of cattle not far away, and asked in surprise, "Hey, Clean, my friend, when did you get so many Angus cattle?" "I bought them a few days ago." "After all, such a large ranch can only raise more than 1,000 cattle. Isn't it a bit too wasteful?" Kate nodded in agreement. "Indeed, it's not pleasant to see so much grass wasted every year. We cowboys don't feel good. We have advised old John before. Let him raise more cattle, but unfortunately he is not the boss and can't make the decision." Kinzu curled his lips. "What do you mean by feeling bad? Just say it directly if you are envious, jealous, or hateful." Fortunately, Kate did not notice Kinzu's disdainful expression. Instead, she greeted Kinzu and took the initiative to help John drive the cattle. Kinzu was a little embarrassed now. He didn't expect the American to be so enthusiastic. He quickly patted Shilabai, rode his horse and followed, and watched the cattle with everyone. However, looking at the place where the cattle passed, Kinzu was even more dumbfounded. Kate's pasture was originally quite rich and dense, but after being eaten by more than 10,000 gluttons, it was simply uprooted. Kinzu didn't feel anything when he was on his own ranch, but he felt a little sorry for making someone else's ranch like this. "Hey, buddy, I'm really sorry. Let's put it this way, the pasture on my ranch is ready to be upgraded, and I'll send it to you another day when the pasture is harvested." Kinzu quickly caught up with Kate, who was shouting at the cattle, and said apologetically as he looked at the place that was swept by his own gluttons. Kate was a little dazed, and didn't understand what Kinzu meant by this nonsense. It wasn't until she saw Kinzu's eyes that she laughed out loud. "Clean, don't you know that after the pasture is eaten, it will grow again in a few days? But if you don't want the pasture, I don't mind pulling it over. After all, my pasture is really not enough." Kinzu looked at John next to him with a puzzled look. "Isn't it true that the unimproved pasture grows so fast?" "Boss, it takes a little longer for grass to grow when it is just planted. Once it is harvested, it will grow very fast and will grow to its original height in a few days. That's why we have so much grass left." Seeing Kinzu's confusion, John explained with a smile. Kinzu was a little surprised. He thought that the grass without improvement would grow so fast. But he still said to Kate, "Then it's settled. We will send it to you when we harvest the grass in a few days. You just need to prepare a place." No, Clean, you are too polite. You just need to notify me when you harvest the grass. If you send it to me, I won't take it." Kate quickly refused. It can be seen that he was very serious. Kinzu didn't expect that Kate would refuse him after he was generous. After a few more refusals, seeing that he still refused, Kinzu didn't insist and let him do it. Anyway, it's enough that his intention is there. Si est escuchando esta novela en un canal distinto a mundo fanfic novelas, significat lo descarga and y subir en cines fuerzos invitamos cordialmente a visitar nuestro canal. Mundo fanfic novelas all encontrar la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos narradores. Te esperamos para sumergirte en un mundo de novelas increíbles. Chapter 92 New Year's Eve, please give me a reward. It was not until noon that the cattle finally arrived at the new pasture after trekking through mountains and rivers. The Angus cattle who saw the new pasture, regardless of their fatigue from the journey, rushed over one by one, lowered their heads and began to nibble. For a moment, the whole pasture was filled with the sound of cattle chewing food and horses neighing softly. Kate followed all the way to the new pasture and saw the fresh and tender pasture. She asked in surprise, "Clean, what kind of pasture is this? Why is it growing so well?" After saying that, she turned over and got off the horse, parted the green pasture, and looked at it carefully. "This is a new variety of alfalfa that my friend helped me improve. How is it? It looks pretty good, right?" Kinzu looked at Kate's surprised expression and smiled triumphantly. "Great pasture, much better than mine and old York's. You see, the stem is half as thick as other pastures, and the leaves are wider and thicker. It's really good pasture." Kate looked at the pasture that was parted in front of her and said with emotion, "Yes. These are all the results from the laboratory. If the yield is not so low, I really want to plant this kind of grass in the whole pasture." Seeing Kate's sigh, Kinzu blocked the way in advance. These are all his secrets, and no one can tell them. Kate was not as disappointed as Kinzu expected when he heard this. Come to think of it, his pasture is not big, and the effect of these grasses is not clear now. The risk of reseeding is too great. He is not as rich as Kinzu, and he is not as confident as he is in his improved grass. Clean, if you have more grass next year, you must sell me some, Kate said with a smile. This year's grass plus the grass Kinzu will give him in a few days. It's enough. Although he doesn't plan to plant this kind of grass. But it's okay to improve the diet for the cows. No problem, just come and pull it when the time comes. Kinzu readily agreed. As long as it doesn't require seeds, everything can be discussed. Watching Kate riding away happily on the brown quarter, John said with a smile. Now Kate's family has so much grass that they can't use it all up. Kinzu pulled the reins of Xiaobao and said indifferently. Anyway, we have to sell it after harvesting. Our new grass is enough for the 10,000 cows to eat for a while, and we just need to sow the new grass seeds. He looked at the time and it was already 12 o'clock. So he turned his horse's head and said to John with a smile. I'm going back first, you should go back and eat early. Sooty should have prepared lunch. Ha, yes, boss, Sooty has prepared lunch and is waiting for us to go back. John raised his eyebrows and said proudly. With a laugh, Kinzu called Eva and Dale to join him, and the three of them rode back to the villa together. Back at the villa, Kinzu let down the little Jerry who had been staying obediently. The little guy behaved well today. He didn't make a fuss, otherwise he really couldn't sit on the horse. After searching the villa for a while, he finally found the two little idiots in the room, biting each other's tails. When Daha and Xiaohe saw Kinzu coming back, they immediately opened their mouths and moved closer to Kinzu, wagging their drooling tails. He patted the two puppies' heads and said, "You must be hungry. Let's go get you some food." After that, he took the two little idiots to make milk. While they were drinking milk, Kinzu also found some pine nuts for his trustworthy little Jerry. When he settled the little ancestors, Eva also called for dinner downstairs, so Kinzu had time to go downstairs to satisfy his appetite. In the afternoon, he had a rare leisure time. A cup of coffee and a plate of snacks cooked by Eva. Kinzu was alone in the garden on the second floor, looking at the rough sea. The ranch affairs have been sorted out. In a few days, all the grass will be harvested and new grass seeds will be sown. As for the irrigation system, I'd better leave it to Once and his company to do it together. I don't know when I will have enough points. As for the cattle and sheep, let's just keep this number for now. This is the first time I have raised so many cattle. Otherwise, with John and others helping me, I really feel that I can't keep them. I will go to learn herding with them tomorrow. Otherwise, I will just hang around all day. As a ranch owner, I still have to know how to do some ranch work. While thinking about it, Kinzu suddenly remembered something Eva said when they were having dinner just now. That is the problem of milk. Now the milk of the ranch has to be purchased from the supermarket. Such a large ranch doesn't even have a cow. He took out the local tire and called John, and the call was quickly connected. "Boss, what's wrong? What's the matter?" Listening to John's unclear voice on the other end of the phone and the noisy environment around him, Kinzu patted his head. It seems that the call was not made at a good time. He had eaten, and they were still eating. "Sorry to interrupt your meal. It's like this. I want to ask why we didn't raise a few cows in our ranch before," Kinzu asked apologetically. John on the other end of the phone drank a mouthful of soup to smooth it out, and then answered, "Boss, it's like this. In the past, Mr. Hill didn't come to the ranch often, and the ranch was not for profit. So we didn't raise cows. For milk, we went to Revere to buy it ourselves." Kinzu suddenly realized that although John's words were more subtle, Kinzu still understood the reason. The cost of raising dairy cows is higher. The ranch doesn't need to sell milk, so can we raise it ourselves? That would be too extravagant. Let's do this. We need to buy a few more horses in the next 2 days, and buy some cows by the way. There are more cowboys on the ranch now. It's not cost effective to buy milk again. Okay, boss, I'll do it tomorrow. How many cows do we need to raise? Do we drink it ourselves or sell it? John decided to ask more clearly to be on the safe side. Kinzu thought about it and was short of points now. Should I get a few more and save some points? Then get more, all for the ranch to increase its output. After thinking about it, Kinzu decided to raise more. Even a mosquito leg is meat, and now he is short of points. Okay, I got it. John hung up the phone and felt fortunate for his wit. If he really bought a few heads, he might have to make another trip. After taking a sip of coffee, Kinzu hung up the phone. He stretched comfortably. Feeling the warm sunshine of the approaching autumn and the warm breeze with a slight smell of the sea, this kind of day without having to punch in on time and looking at people's faces feels very comfortable. Welcome to join the Leonville Book Friends group number 332189705. It's New Year's Eve. Thank you Fensksia for the 3 rewards. Leon wishes everyone all the best in the new year and a prosperous career. Today is the new year. I have been busy with the cleaning all day. Now I guess everyone has eaten the New Year's Eve dinner. Did you get the New Year's money? In consideration of Leon's hard work in writing, do you want to share Leon's points? Chapter 93. First Sea Fishing. Kinzu was lying comfortably on the recline, enjoying the sea breeze. He was thinking about raising cows when suddenly an idea came to his mind. He remembered that there seemed to be a dairy factory in the ranch system. He put the coffee on the coffee table and stretched his body. Kinzu leaned comfortably on the recliner and squinted his eyes. After a while, he opened the system in his mind. This time, Kinzu did not summon the elf Fefade. He always felt that this little girl was a little mysterious. He hadn't seen her for so long, and he didn't know where she would stay when he didn't summon her. It felt like every time he summoned her, she would suddenly appear and then suddenly disappear. After opening the system, Kinzu found the building icon of the dairy factory in the ranch building column. Dairy factory level LV1 can accommodate 100 cows for milk production and processing. Points required for construction. 8,000 points. Kinzu curled his lips. Did the system calculate that he only had 8,000 points left? But it still has to be built. Since you want points, the initial investment is inevitable. After choosing to build in the system, Kinzu looked at the empty remaining points and could only smile helplessly. After turning off the system, Kinzu continued to squint his eyes, enjoying the rare leisure. Daha and Xiaohe, the 2 stupid huskies, seemed to know no fatigue. In the small piece of purple lavender in the garden, they played the game of chasing each other happily. And little Jerry, the new member of the family and the new friend of the 2 huskies. He sat helplessly on the recliner and accompanied this unscrupulous owner to bask in the sun. At this moment, the mobile phone that had just been put down rang again. Kinzu lay still and gently tapped the little Jerry next to him with his fingers. Little Jerry, who was drowsy next to him, was suddenly awakened by the ringing of the mobile phone next to him. When he was a little confused, he felt that his master was calling him. With a pair of confused little eyes, Jerry looked at Kinzu with a puzzled look. "Go, little Jerry, help me get the phone." Kinzu raised his hand and pointed at the vibrating gold. Little Jerry was dumbfounded when he saw the gold that was almost half the size of his body. However, under the urging of the unscrupulous owner, he still struggled to pick up the ringing gold with 2 short claws. Kinzu took the ringing phone from the little guy's arms and answered it. "Hi, Mr. Clean, we will be at your manor soon." "Clean, do you want to go directly to the Little John?" As soon as the call was connected, Once's slightly respectful voice came over. "You can go directly to the Little John, I will tell him." Kinzu was not surprised to receive the call from this guy, and said lightly. After a few more pleasantries, Once on the other end of the phone hung up the phone with a respectful face. Today, the boss once again reminded him that he must build a good relationship with this big customer. After Kinzu hung up the phone, he called John directly. After a few rings, John picked up the phone. "Boss, what's wrong?" John's somewhat puzzled voice sounded from the other end of the phone. "It's only been a while, why did he call again?" "It's like this, John, Once will come to build a dairy factory in a while, which is a place for cows to produce milk. You just pick a place for them." Listening to Kinzu's calm tone on the phone, John was completely shocked. What kind of efficiency is this? Just when he was still eating, he agreed to raise dairy cows. Now he has just finished eating, and the construction team has come to build a cowshed. John responded weakly and hung up the phone. I couldn't help but sigh, is this the difference between a cowboy and a boss? Kinzu certainly didn't know John's complicated thoughts. After hanging up the phone, he handed the phone to Jerry. Looking at its confused eyes, Kinzu pointed to the coffee table next to him, and little Jerry ran over and put the phone away. After sitting comfortably in the garden for a while, Kinzu looked at the sea in the distance and suddenly felt like trying sea fishing. Just do it when you think of it. This is Kinzu's most real mentality now. Without the pressure of life and the entanglement of a lot of work, he can really try whatever he thinks of. He came downstairs and took out the fishing rod he bought from Revere Fishing Tackle Store last time from the storage room. The boss said it was for sea fishing, and I don't know if it was a scam. Calling Dale, who was idle, the two did not ride horses, but each rode a four-wheeled motorcycle and went to the beach. As the saying goes, a horse will die if it is seen from a mountain. When Kinzu sat on the second floor, it seemed as if he was at the beach. But when he really went there, it took him more than 10 minutes to get there on a four-wheeled motorcycle. The two parked the car, picked up the fishing rod and came to a beach with large and small reefs. Carefully, Dale and he came to the nearest reef on the sea surface, and then they stopped. Looking at the blue sea with microwaves, listening to the clatter sound of the waves hitting the reefs. Kinzu opened his hands, closed his eyes slightly, and felt the breath of the sea. It was not until Dale sorted out the fishing gear that Kinzu stopped this pretentious behavior. He picked up the fishing rod and was full of confidence to start his first sea fishing. However, if there was someone who knew a little about sea fishing here, he would definitely cover his face with his hands and sigh to the sky, two prodigals. Holding the best fishing rod, but even the basic grip is wrong. However, Kinzu and the others don't think there is anything wrong with them now. The two sea fishing novices are now full of confidence. Although they don't know much about sea fishing, they have never eaten pork, but they have seen pigs run. Kinzu picked up the fishing rod and swung it forward with all his strength. The fish hook with a tin sinker, accompanied by the sound of the line reel, drew a perfect arc in the air and fell into the sea. However, Kinzu estimated it with his eyes and felt a little ashamed. It seemed that he had only swung it about 40 meters. Turning his head to look at Dale, he saw that she swung it lightly, and the line reel made a rapid sound of swish. Estimating the distance, it seems to be about 60 or 70 meters. Turning his head, Kinzu decided not to care about it anymore. Being able to catch fish is the kingly thing. With his own fishing skills, would you be afraid of her? However, when Kinzu began to reel in the line as taught in the sea fishing video he found on the computer, he was immediately delighted. Feeling the fishing line being tightened, Kinzu began to sigh that writing his own fishing skills was really a big buff. It is so easy to catch fish in this way. I tried a fishing line, but it couldn't be pulled. I don't know what kind of big fish will be below this time, and what kind of surprise it will bring to me. Thank you Fenxi, Zi Shangmu, Shinshin Laokum, Shinian Laokong, Shinian Yuishu, and Union Kang Samsui Nian for your rewards and support, and thank you my Shrew for your rewards and support. Thank you Su General for becoming the third helmsman of this book. Thank you, and I apologize to everyone again. I drank too much yesterday and fell asleep halfway through coding. I stopped updating yesterday, and Liu-un will make up for it in the next 2 days. Chapter 94 COD. But after a while, Kinzu felt something was wrong. He reeled in the line several times, but there was still no movement. Now he was a little confused. This didn't feel like a fish at all. Dale, who had just cast the fishing line next to him, thought that she had cast much farther than the boss, and wanted to show off. But when she reeled in the line, she found that she couldn't reel it in. He was overjoyed and shouted, "Clean, hurry up, do I have a fish?" Kinzu let go of his hand and found that his fishing rod was still motionless. So he didn't care about it anymore. He had already understood something in his heart. So he immediately ran to Dale's side. At this time, Dale was also reeling in the line with a nervous face. This was her first time to go sea fishing. She had only fished in the lake with her father a few times when she was a child. Unexpectedly, there was a fish just after she cast the hook. "Clean, what kind of fish is this? It's so strong that I can't reel in the line." Seeing Kinzu coming over, Dale clenched the sea rod in her hand and asked in confusion. Kinzu's bad premonition became clearer. Even with Dale's strength, he couldn't pull the fish. What could it be? He remembered a mistake that novices must make, which was particularly emphasized in the sea fishing video. Hanging on the bottom, this is obviously a mistake that most novices will make, that is, the fish hook or tin pendant is hung on the reef on the seabed. Dale, try to pull it back, it doesn't seem to be a fish. Patting his forehead, Kinzu was not in a hurry to help, and said helplessly. Dale was stunned when he heard it, and suddenly reacted. If this is a fish, why didn't it react at all after pulling it for a long time? Thinking of this, Dale was no longer polite, and pulled the fishing line back with both hands. When he pulled the line up, Kinzu sighed, and sure enough, there was no fish hook and tin pendant. Dale's face was also slightly red, and her originally fair skin became white and rosy. With a simple casual outfit, she looked particularly attractive. Kinzu was a little dazzled by what he saw, so he quickly changed the subject and said, "Did you bring a lot of fish hooks and tin sinkers? I remember I took a lot when I bought them." Dale didn't pay attention to Kinzu's expression, and squatted down awkwardly to look through the bag she brought. Kinzu then pulled up his fishing rod with force, and sure enough, it was empty. After replacing the tin sinker and the fish hook, Dale put away the fishing rod, stood by with her arms folded, and watched Kinzu busy. She was not going to fish again now, but at least she had to learn how to fish again. It was enough to lose face once, and she couldn't keep losing face. Kinzu looked at Dale standing by, looking like she was watching a good show, and suddenly felt a little embarrassed. If it sank to the bottom again, it would be a bit embarrassing. He gritted his teeth and couldn't let a woman laugh at him. Kinzu threw the fish hook into the sea again with force. This time he threw it farther, nearly 60 meters. This time, Kinzu followed what he saw in the sea fishing video. When the tin pendant just entered the sea, he began to slowly reel in the line. Sure enough, it was good this time. Regardless of the distance, at least it didn't get stuck. Kinzu looked at the fish hook only 20 meters away from the shore and thought helplessly. Facing Dale's teasing eyes from behind, Kinzu insisted on not moving. I don't believe that I can't catch fish with cheating fishing skills. Kinzu began to mutter in his heart. Fortunately, the fishing skills are still very powerful. Just 1 minute passed. When Dale was about to persuade Kinzu to give up, he heard a voice of "Got it." Looking up, his boss was reeling in the line quickly, and the fishing line was stretched straight and swaying from side to side. Obviously, it didn't sink to the bottom this time. Kinzu felt the power coming from his hand and struggled to reel in the fishing line. It was his first time to go sea fishing, and he had obviously forgotten about walking the fish. Fortunately, the strength of this fish was obviously not enough to fight Kinzu. After a stalemate, it slowly gave up resistance and was successfully pulled to the shore by Kinzu. Looking at the cod in front of him, it took so much effort to pull it up. It was only 40 or 50 minutes long, and it was so hard on the seabed, I thought it would be a big one. But after thinking about it, it seemed that something was wrong. It seemed that I forgot to walk the fish. Kinzu was ashamed. What was going on? When did I become so unreliable? Dale didn't care what Kinzu was thinking. She used a wooden barrel to fill a bucket of seawater and put the lively sea fish in. Although she didn't know how to fish for sea fish, she knew that cod couldn't leave the seawater for too long. She knew it when she went to the supermarket before, because most of the cod sold in American supermarkets were frozen with the heads cut off. After harvesting a cod that was not too precious, Kinzu regained confidence again. After putting the bait on this time, he held the rod with both hands and threw it out with force. Instantly, the tin pendant flew straight toward the sea level like a meteor. The reel under his fishing rod was also releasing the line rapidly. This time, it took a full 60 meters for the hook to fall into the sea. Kinzu slowly began to reel in the fishing line without panic, making sure that it would not get stuck again. The fishing skill was really a big bug. Just 1 minute after the hook sank, Kinzu's fishing line was stretched straight again. Dale, who was standing next to him, was a little dumbfounded. Is this sea fishing so easy? Looking at the sea rod next to her, she was a little eager to try again. Kinzu finally did not forget to play with the fish this time. Feeling the huge force coming from the fishing line, he slowly began to release the line. He released a few meters, then reeled in a few meters, and then slowly began to play with the fish. Until the end, the fish gave up resistance and let Kinzu pull it close, and threw it onto the reef with one force. What surprised Kinzu was that it was still a cod this time, but this time the fish was much bigger, nearly 80 centimeters long. The bucket he brought this time could not hold it, so Dale had to put it aside and let it fend for itself. Kinzu looked at the poor big cod and wondered if the catch in his fish farm was so abundant. You know, cod live in groups, often in large groups of tens of thousands. He was just fishing at the seaside, and there was such a big cod. How many cod are there in this school of fish? Looking at the endless blue sea level, Kinzu had the urge to go down and take a look for the first time. However, when Kinzu opened the system in his mind and looked at the diving skill under the fisherman's panel and wanted to learn it, he remembered that his points had been reset to 0. Thanks to 10 years of reading, 10 years of Old Worm, Love, and ZJ3, 4, 5, 4, 6, 9, 4 for their rewards and support. Thank you. Happy New Year, fellow book lovers. Chapter 95 Grouper. Kinzu sighed helplessly. It's only when you need to learn that you regret not having learned enough. Even the points are like this. It seems that we need to speed up the pace of development. We can't always go out without gaining anything. Looking at the poor Atlantic cod thrown aside by Dale, Kinzu was thinking about how to cook it in the evening. This kind of fish seemed to be the kind he had eaten at John's house when he first came to the ranch. I remember Susie grilled it at the time. Should I try fried fish fillets or braised it in red sauce in the evening? Thinking of this, Kinzu couldn't help but want to go back. But thinking about the purpose of his visit this time, it was mainly to get a general understanding of that fish caught in the fish farm and prepare for the development of the fish farm. Thinking of this, Kinzu could only suppress the gluttony that was aroused by the cod on the ground. He put the bait on his hook again and threw it into the depths of the sea again. 10 minutes later, boss, how did you do it? Dale looked at the 8 or 9 Atlantic cod and herrings that were jumping around on the reef next to him, each of which was more than half a meter long, and looked at Kinzu's back in silence. She was completely shocked by her boss. Watching Kinzu pull that cod one by one, she just wanted to ask Kinzu, are you sure you didn't cheat? Although she had never seen a fishing expert, no matter how good a person is at fishing, he wouldn't be like Kinzu now. Every time she took the fish and put it away, just when she was about to take her own fishing rod to try again, a newly caught cod would always appear in front of her. This was simply not fishing, it was as if the fish stayed in the sea obediently, waiting for his hook to go down and pull them up one by one. Nothing, it's just a technique. Kinzu turned around and looked at Dale with some pride. Dale rolled her eyes helplessly. You are kidding, I don't know who got stuck on the bottom the first time and broke the hook. But Kinzu was not in the mood to brag to Dale at this moment, his brows slightly frowned, something was wrong today. This is almost 10 times of fishing, in addition to Atlantic cod, it's herring. Although both of these fish are not cheap, since they are both of this kind, they are definitely not the most precious in this area. Since they are not the most precious, what about the effect of the 1/10th chance of catching precious fish that comes with my fishing skill? While I was thinking about it, the fishing line was tightened again. Kinzu began to reel in the line skillfully. After repeating it 7 or 8 times, how could he not be skilled? However, this time Kinzu miscalculated a little. Before he started to reel in the fish, he felt a strong force transmitted from the fishing line to the fishing rod. The fishing rod that was originally held firmly almost slipped out of his hand, and even he himself was dragged by it. It seemed that he was about to step into the air and fall into the seawater more than a meter away from the reef. Fortunately, Dale was used to his fishing speed and had been paying attention to him. Seeing that something was wrong, he immediately stepped forward and grabbed Kinzu, and pulled him back, avoiding the tragedy of a big man being dragged into the water by a fish. Boss, it looks like this is a big fish. Dale helped Kinzu hold the fishing rod and said excitedly. Kinzu calmed down a little and nodded, yes, I know it must be big by looking at its strength, but I don't know what kind of fish it is. After standing firm, Kinzu took the fishing rod from Dale and held the thick sea rod tightly again. Kinzu immediately began to speed up the line release speed, and then he felt that the strength in his hand was a little weaker. Relying on intuition, Kinzu felt that this should not be an ordinary fish, so he was very careful when playing with the fish. It was more than half an hour before the guy on the seabed gave up resistance and was slowly pulled to the shore by Kinzu. Only then did Kinzu see its full appearance clearly. It turned out to be a golden grouper with a body size of about 1.5 meters. Kinzu knew that this fish was a kind of grouper, and the price in domestic supermarkets seemed to be more than 100 yuan per kilogram. The reason why Kinzu knew this fish was from a class reunion. At that party, a rich classmate invited us to dinner. We ordered this kind of grouper, but the size of the grouper was very different from the golden grouper now. Now that we know it is a grouper, Kinzu is more careful. Dale also recognized a precious fish species at this time, and quickly picked up the scoop net that he had brought with him but had not used before and stepped forward to help. So under Kinzu's deliberate guidance, the golden grouper entered the scoop net smoothly, and with the joint efforts of the two, they finally got this valuable grouper on the shore smoothly. After landing, Kinzu could see its full appearance clearly. This colorful big fish was indeed a precious golden grouper. Kinzu estimated that it was 1.6 meters long and weighed more than 200 kilograms. Looking at the golden grouper that was now tossed around, exhaling more than inhaling, Kinzu was panting beside him. The fish was not relaxed, and he was so tired that he could hardly stand. Now Kinzu is more determined to speed up the development of the fishery. It will take a long time for the ranch to produce, and the only source of points for now is the fish caught in the fishery. After a short rest and recovering a little, Kinzu decided to wend today's sea fishing. However, looking at the big and small fish all over the ground, he was scratching his head again. The four-wheel motorcycle that Dale and he rode here seemed to be difficult to carry. Boss, call John and ask him to drive a Ford pickup truck over. Seeing Kinzu's embarrassment, Dale smiled and suggested. Nodding helplessly, it was the only way. So Kinzu went to the beach and washed his hands full of fishy smell. After wiping them clean, he took out his local tire and gold and called John. After a while, John drove over in the small pickup truck that used to be from the ranch. When he arrived at the beach, John opened the door and jumped out. He came to Kinzu's side in a few steps and looked at the money spot on the ground, which was still slightly undulating, and was a little amazed. Boss, you're really lucky. Such a big grouper is rare even in our fishery. It costs at least tens of dollars per kilogram outside. Kinzu smiled and said proudly, of course, my luck has always been good, otherwise I wouldn't have such a group of excellent employees like you, right? Ha ha, of course, boss, the ranch has us, you can rest assured. Seeing his smile, you can know the effect of Kinzu's compliment. John, the old cowboy, is obviously very happy. The inherent immodesty of Westerners is also reflected in him. Kinzu was secretly proud in his heart. He learned this trick from his former boss. When I just graduated and didn't know much, I was always flattered by the fat man. I felt that the whole company couldn't function without me. I was full of energy every day. Who knew that in the end, I realized that he said this to every employee. At this time, Kinzu realized that this was the way to control subordinates as a boss. Visiting relatives. I worked hard in the internet cafe for 2 hours to code a chapter. Thank you for your support. Please don't spray me too much. Chapter 96 Recruitment again. Together with John, Kinzu and the other two struggled to get the already depressed grouper to the back of the pickup truck. They took the neck bag brought by John from the pickup truck, put several Atlantic cotton herring in it, and threw it directly into the pickup truck. Anyway, the back of the pickup truck has enough space, so it saves him the trouble. After getting a few fish, Kinzu realized that his clothes were already a mess. Fortunately, he was wearing ordinary clothes when he came out, not a big brand, otherwise he would be distressed. Let John drive back first. Kinzu packed up the fishing gear and hung it on the four-wheeled motorcycle, and then rode back to the villa with Dale, who was also wet beside him. When the two arrived at the door of the villa, John was already waiting by the side, and the three of them worked together to lift the grouper down again. Boss, what should we do with this big guy now? John looked at the grouper that was on the verge of death and looked at Kinzu with an eager look. Just waiting for him to say now, I will help this poor guy to transcend. This, John, how many days do you think it will take us to finish it? Kinzu looked at the huge golden grouper and asked hesitantly. How many days will it take for several people to eat such a big guy? This, Kinzu's question stumped John. Although John wanted to say that it would be finished in a few days if so many people shared it. But think about it, this is also a rare fish with a lot of value. How can it be so easy to share it with cowboys? Kinzu's thinking is similar to John's. It took a lot of effort to catch such a good guy. Is it really necessary to share it like this? After struggling for a while, Kinzu suddenly laughed again. What's wrong with me? Since it's so easy to catch such a big grouper, it means that my fishery has a lot of fish. Now my first task is to recruit a few fishermen and start to harvest the first pot of gold belonging to the manor. John, go and deal with this big guy first, and then accompany me to Revere. We still need a few fishermen. Kinzu watched Dale take all the cotton herring off the pickup truck, so he turned his head and looked at John, smiling. Okay, boss, I'll call them over to help clean up. John agreed neatly, and called Ryan and Reel. The three of them carried the golden grouper and went to the living area to clean up. After Kinzu gave John instructions, he didn't care how they dealt with it. This is the advantage of being a boss. You only need to speak, and someone will be busy doing things. Kinzu was intoxicated for a few seconds, then he came back to his senses. He greeted Dale, who was parking a four-wheeled motorcycle next to him, and the two returned to the room to take a shower. This sea fishing is good in every way. The only bad thing is that the fish are too big, and it often stains the clothes. After taking a shower, Kinzu changed into a dark casual outfit of Gucci. The dirty clothes were thrown directly into the bathroom, and now Weaver came to wash them every day. Ever since Eva moved into the villa, Rancher Keen has been living a very comfortable life. John, have you packed up so quickly? As soon as he walked downstairs, Kinzu saw John changed into a casual cowboy outfit, wearing a wide-brimmed cowboy hat, sitting on the sofa in the living room, waiting for him. Boss, those two guys knew you had something else to do, so they drove me over here. They'll be fine over there. John shrugged, looking very helpless. With his somewhat thick mustache, it looked very funny. Kinzu felt a little warm in his heart. This was really a group of lovely employees. He nodded and said nothing. At this time, Dale also came down from the upstairs after taking a shower. She was wearing a sexy tight denim outfit and a short waistcoat, which highlighted her already proud figure. Kinzu just glanced at her slightly. He was now somewhat immune to her sexy outfit. Since everyone was here, he looked at the time and said, let's go early and come back early after we're done. Then he led the way out of the villa. John and Dale nodded indifferently and followed him. Anyway, they just had to follow that boss's arrangements. Dale drove the car on the road, John sat in the co-pilot, and Kinzu naturally sat in the back, enjoying the boss-level treatment of having a driver and bodyguard. Night the 15th drove steadily on the interstate highway to Revere. At this time, Dale drove without the wildness of the past. It was stable all the way, strictly following the highway speed limit signs. After more than 10 minutes of driving, Night the 15th, under the command of John, stopped very steadily in front of a bar called Star of the Sea. After several people got off the car, Kinzu began to look at the Star of the Sea in front of him. The most profound impression of this bar on Kinzu was the overall color of the bar, which was like the sea water. The bar is just an ordinary 3-story building, but because it is surrounded by the deep blue of the sea level, it looks very classy. Boss, this bar is second to none even in Boston, where there are many fishermen. Fishermen like to come here for a drink in their spare time. As if he saw Kinzu's confusion, John led the way in front and smiled as he turned back to explain to Kinzu. Hey, John. Aren't you a cowboy? How do you know so much? Kinzu looked at his back and asked curiously. John stopped when he heard it, looked at the door of the bar with some emotion, and sighed. This bar has been here for more than 20 years. At the time, I was not a cowboy. I also worked on a boat for a few years. When I didn't have a break, I would come here for a drink. What happened later? How did you become a cowboy later? Kinzu was listening carefully, and when he saw John stop talking, he immediately asked. After a pause, John seemed to be lost in some memories, and murmured. Later, because of the economic depression at the time, and there were too many fishermen, the resources in the sea could not supply the fishermen's fishing. So I was ready to change my career. I was going to develop in the West, but later I met the father of the Dale sisters, so I became a cowboy on their ranch. After saying that, he looked at Dale and said with some nostalgia. At the time, I was still a half-grown boy who knew nothing. It was their father who taught me how to be an excellent cowboy. Kinzu was also a little emotional when he heard that Eva was in danger. No wonder the old cowboy was so excited when he heard that Eva was in danger. It turned out that there was such a relationship. I have been visiting relatives these 2 days, and I have been drinking every day. Please forgive me. Thanks to Taro Ultraman and Book Friends 1611616053849 PLAO001 and Fenxilove for their rewards and support. Thank you very much. Chapter 97 Will Anderson. After John finished speaking, he pushed open the blue door of the bar and walked in first. Kinzu and Dale looked at each other and followed him into the bar. This was Kinzu's 3rd time in that bar in the United States. The first time was to recruit cowboys, and the second time was in New York. The time, there were so many erotic stories. And now it's the 3rd time to come to the bar. Looking back at his time in China, as a homebody, he had only been to KTV a few times with his colleagues at most. He didn't have the confidence to go to a place like a bar. It's not that he didn't have money, anyone could take out a few $1,000s, but he just didn't have the spending power. It's like the presidential suite in a hotel, a few $1,000s a night, anyone can afford it, but how many ordinary people would go there? After sighing that he had fallen, Kinzu looked up and looked at this ocean star. It was different from ordinary bars. The decorations here were no longer those old photos that were obviously a bit old. There are also photos here, but they are all group photos of some sailors and marine animals, including dolphins, seals, and even Kinzu saw a white man whose arms looked thicker than his thighs, and a tiger shark with scars all over his body, which was obviously dead for a long time. Moreover, the decorations here are not deer-head specimens or anything like that, but models of small boats, all kinds of them, from Spanish galleons to today's steel warships. At this time, there are already quite a few people in the bar, sitting in the booths in groups of 3 or 2 and chatting about something. On the stage, a black man in his 30s or 40s was rapping passionately. While Kinzu was silently looking at the decoration of the bar, he unknowingly followed John to the bar counter. Hi, hello, I need something. Isn't this John? How come you have time to come here today? Behind that bar counter was a white man who was about 50 or 60 years old, a little fat, with a big beer belly. At this time, he was holding a silver white cocktail shaker and looking at John with surprise. Hi, old Rem, long time no see. You're still so energetic. John smiled and greeted this old friend of several decades. When he came here to drink, this guy was just a small waiter. Who would have thought that he is now a bar owner? Yeah, it's been a year or two. How are you doing at Hill Manor? I heard recently that the boss has changed. You won't be unemployed, right? Old Rem quickly put down the silver white cocktail shaker he was wiping and walked out of the bar quickly. After giving John a big bear hug, he asked with concern. John was touched and embarrassed. He smiled and introduced him. Old Rem, I'm not unemployed. Hill Manor has a new boss. Come, let me introduce you. This is the current boss of Hill Manor, Qin from China. Listening to John's introduction, Qin Zhu always felt something was wrong. After thinking for a long time, he realized that his manor, from the time he came here to now, has still been called by the previous name. For a boss, this is definitely not qualified. But now is not the time to think about changing the name. Qin Zhu walked up to the old white man who looked to be in his 50s but had some grey hair, shook hands and introduced with a smile. Hello, Mr. Rem. I am Qin Zhu, you can call me Qin. I came here to recruit a few fishermen. You know, I have a large fishery there. Old Rem shook hands with Qin Zhu enthusiastically, nodded with an expression of understanding, and said, well, I know this. The fishery area of Hill Manor is really large. Wait a minute, I will help you pick a few good players. After speaking, without waiting for Qin Zhu to answer, he walked towards a few white men who were playing cards at a table in the distance. Qin Zhu was a little stunned. Isn't this too enthusiastic? Boss, old Rem is like this. He has this kind of warm and hospitable personality. I think it was this quality that allowed him to take over the Ocean Star. John looked at Qin Zhu's dazed look and took the initiative to explain to him. He still understood his old friend. Qin Zhu felt relieved after looking at old Rem who was talking to a few white men in the distance. This was similar to some enthusiastic old people in China, who especially loved to support the younger generation. Just as he was thinking about it, old Rem came over with a few big men, pointed at Qin Zhu and introduced them to them. This is the new owner of Hill Manor, Qin. He came here to find a few helpers for Hill Manor's fishery. The rest is up to you. After that, he didn't say anything else, went back to the back of the bar, and continued to wipe his silver cocktail shaker that he had to wipe countless times every day. Qin Zhu looked at the several strong men in front of him. They all had well-developed limbs. One look at them showed that they had a lot of strength. The leader was a middle-aged white man with short golden hair and about 40 years old. Although he was middle-aged, looking at his arms that were almost thicker than his thighs, Qin Zhu couldn't connect him with a middle-aged man in his 40s or 50s. Qin Zhu looked at him for a long time, and always felt that he seemed to have seen him somewhere. While he was wondering, the big white man took a step forward and introduced himself. Hello, Mr. Qin, I'm Will Anderson. I am 45 years old this year, and I can skillfully drive all kinds of large and small fishing boats. After that, he stretched out his hand and looked at Qin Zhu expectantly. Qin Zhu was slightly stunned, and quickly stretched out his hand to shake hands with him. He didn't expect this strong man to be so active. It seems that he needs a job now. Qin Zhu guessed correctly. Will Anderson really needs a job at this time. His wife had a serious illness some time ago, and the savings he had saved when he was young have been consumed. Now he doesn't even have the tuition for his daughter's next semester, so he can only continue to run his old business and start fishing at sea. But unfortunately, after decades of fishing, the fishermen around Boston are now small-scale family units, and there are very few large fishing grounds or fishing boats here. Boss, this Will Anderson is a very capable guy. When he was young, he dared to go out to sea alone with a small wooden boat. He once caught an adult tiger shark with his bare hands. But now there are not many fishing grounds around, and he doesn't want to go out to work, so he is still idle. Look, that is his photo. John leaned over and whispered in Qin Zhu's ear. After that, he pointed to the photo hanging on the wall, the one that Qin Zhu saw at first, the one with the tiger shark. Qin Zhu nodded in realization. No wonder he felt that the Anderson in front of him was familiar. It turned out that he was the one who caught the tiger shark in the photo. It was just because the photo showed him when he was young, so Qin Zhu didn't recognize him at first. Thank you for the rewards and support from Lonely and Ashru. Thank you for your recommendation votes. Thank you. Today's first chapter, Chapter 98, Personnel Confirmation. Kinzu looked at the 1.9-meter tall burly man in front of him with some admiration. He wondered what he would be like when facing a ferocious adult tiger shark. Not everyone would dare to fight a tiger shark. After smiling at him kindly, Kinzu turned his attention to a black man next to him. This was a black man who was slightly shorter than Will. Kinzu couldn't really judge his age, but he felt that he should not be older than Will. Although his physique was not as strong as Will's, it was not much different. Both of them were the kind of people who could tell at a glance that they were absolutely full of explosive power. The black man stepped forward, took the initiative to extend his hand to Kinzu and said, "Mr. Clean, I'm Eric Simon." After a few simple self-introductions, he shook hands with Kinzu and stepped aside. It can be seen that this is a man of few words. Kinzu was a little surprised. It was the first time he saw a black brother who spoke so little. He turned his eyes to John, and the meaning was very clear. "Do you know this man?" John did not disappoint Kinzu. He introduced him softly. "This Simon is also a good player. He is almost Will's apprentice. He seems to be around 30 this year. He has been following Will to sea since he was in his 20s. He just lost his job outside some time ago and returned to his hometown of Revere." Kinzu nodded without denying it and continued to look at the remaining people. Old Rem called 5 people to Kinzu. A white man named Will and a black man named Simon. The remaining 3 were all Latino men, namely Gavin Eden, Austin Hubbard and Derek Patience. Although they were not as muscular as Will, they were all strong men. After Kinzu shook hands with several people one by one, he quickly performed an identification spell on each of them. Will Anderson occupation. Fisherman constitution. 20 strength. 18 intelligence. 9 agility. 10 skills. Diving LV2, vehicle driving LV1, ship driving LV3, ship repair LV1, fishing LV2, fishing LV1. Growth potential. 4 stars. Eric Simon occupation. Fisherman constitution. 18 strength. 15 intelligence. 9 agility. 11 skills. Diving LV2, vehicle driving LV1, ship driving LV2, fishing LV2, fishing LV1. Growth potential. 3 stars. Gavin Eden. 2 stars. Austin Hubbard. 2 stars. Derek Patience. 2 stars. After quickly looking through the attributes of several people, Kinzu was really surprised. Especially Will and Simon's long list of skills. Kinzu felt that since he was favored by the great god, his luck has always been bursting. After coughing lightly, looking at Will and others on the opposite side focusing their eyes on him, Kinzu said lightly, "Old Rem has already introduced me. I'm the new owner of Hill Manor, from China." After a pause, Kinzu looked at everyone and saw that there was no reaction, and continued, "Everyone knows the purpose of my coming here. Since everyone is here, it means that you all want to work in my land and fishery." Seeing that several big men were nodding, Kinzu smiled with satisfaction. "In that case, let me tell you about your salary and benefits. Will, I'm going to give you $1,200 a week. If you go out to sea, it will be calculated separately." "Thank you, Clean, you are such a generous boss. I will definitely work hard in the fishery," Will said with a little excitement. Now he doesn't have to worry about his wife's medical expenses and his daughter's tuition. And there were several envious eyes from the side. A weekly salary of $1,200, which is $4,800 a month, and nearly $60,000 a year. Although it is not too high compared to the wages of seamen in the past, it depends on when it is. Now there are unemployed people everywhere. People who can get a weekly salary of $1,200 are definitely worthy at their envy, not to mention the subsidies for going out to sea. Looking at the envious eyes of Simon and others, Kinzu said to them, "Your weekly salary is $1,000, and it is also calculated separately when you go out to sea. How about it?" Now several people couldn't help but cheer. They nodded their heads in agreement. Even John smacked his lips with envy. Although he knew that seafarers' wages were high, who wouldn't be envious of others' high wages? Only Dale had no expression. She didn't care much about these things, not to mention that Kinzu had already paid $1 million for their family. Looking at the expressions of John and Dale, Kinzu smiled slightly and said nothing else. Some things were not the right time to say. Since everyone has no objection, Hill Manor welcomes you to join. While it's still early, let's go sign a labor contract. I have prepared a cowboy apartment for you, and you can bring your families over to live together if you have families. Looking at Will in front of him, Kinzu said with a smile. Hearing what Kinzu said, Will, Simon and others all smiled excitedly and nodded in agreement. After all, not every manor owner would agree to let others bring their families to live there. Kinzu also learned about this problem from John. At the beginning, he saw that Ryan and the others lived alone, so he asked Susie to build a cafeteria. Later, he was curious why Ryan and the others lived alone. Were they not married? Why didn't I see their lovers? I asked John privately, but John looked at him strangely and said, "Boss, they are all married. Their lovers live in Revere, but they didn't bring their families here because you didn't say they could bring their families to live on the ranch." Kinzu was dumbfounded at the time, and he complained deeply in his heart. Why, when he read novels, the boss didn't need to tell the employees to bring their families, but he had to specifically tell them when he came here. Now that he knew, Kinzu gathered everyone in the grazing area and held an open-air meeting on the spot. He emphasized that if anyone wanted to bring their families, they could bring them. Anyway, the cowboy apartment on the ranch was big enough, and there were a lot of odd jobs on the ranch. If someone could help take care of it, he wouldn't mind paying a few more people. Since everything was agreed, Will and the others said hello to old Rem, who was busy behind that bar. They followed Kinzu out of the Ocean Star. When they arrived at the door, Dale drove over, and this time Kinzu sat in the co-pilot. After letting everyone sit in the back, they drove all the way to the law firm where they signed that contract for the Cowboys last time. When they left the law firm, Will breathed a sigh of relief. After all, words are not enough. Only when a contract is signed in black and white can people feel at ease, right? Si est escuchando esta novela en un canal distinto a mundo fanfic novelas, significat lo descarga and y subir en cines fuerzos invitamos cordialmente a visitar nuestro canal. Mundo fanfic novelas all encontras la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos narradores. Te esperamos para sumergirte en un mundo de novelas increíbles. Chapter 99 Return to the ranch. Boss, in that case, let's go back and pack up and report to the manor in the evening. Will looked up at Kinzu gratefully and said, "Don't be so anxious, it's okay for you to come tomorrow, it's a bit late now." Kinzu looked at the sun outside and saw that it was almost setting. He raised his hand to check the time. It was already 4 o'clock in the afternoon. He smiled and waved at Will, indicating that they didn't need to be so anxious. Unexpectedly, Will shook his head and waved his hand and said, "Boss, it's okay. Everyone is very close. We can go over after packing up our things." After saying that, he turned around and looked at the others. Simon and the others saw that Will said this, and they all nodded in agreement. Anyway, they have become accustomed to this kind of life of moving at any time. Who let them have a house? Thinking of this, Simon couldn't help but complain deeply about the damn American property tax. They have to pay every year even if they don't live there. Since they're so active, Kinzu no longer objects. He still likes employees who were active at work, although he was not very active when he was working. Looking at the backs of Will and the others going away, Kinzu patted John on the shoulder and said meaningfully, "John, don't worry, I will not forget your contribution to the ranch. You should know that I am not a stingy boss. I will not treat you unfairly." After that, he opened the car door and got in the car, leaving John standing there in a daze. "Hi. Uncle John, let's go." Dale, who started the night in the driver's seat, looked at John standing there in a daze, and shouted with a smile. It was not until Dale's voice came over that John came back to his senses. He opened the car door and got in the car in ecstasy. Looking at Kinzu in the front seat, he said excitedly, "Boss, don't worry, we will definitely let you see our contribution to the ranch." Kinzu nodded without comment. He really didn't need John to do anything now. As long as he maintained his current state, and watched the ranch with the cowboys, and developed steadily, it would be fine. Night the 15th drove steadily on the way back to the ranch. The afterglow of the setting sun splashed on the shiny black body of the car, illuminating the originally black body with a golden glow. There were few vehicles on the interstate highway, and no car passed by for several minutes. The scenery on both sides of the road did not change for dozens of kilometers. It was all endless wilderness and herds of livestock. Occasionally there were a few houses, standing there alone. When we returned to the ranch villa, only half of the sun was exposed outside. In the distance came the excited neighing of Shiabai, but it was accompanied by the somewhat angry voice of Eva. It was getting late, and Shiabai should go back to the stable. John asked to leave as soon as he got off the car. He was eager to show his attitude now. However, Kinzu thought for a while and said, "John, let's do this." Everyone has already picked up their spouses. There is a new guy coming today. Let's hold a barbecue party. Okay, boss, I'll go inform them right away. There will be delicious food again. John laughed and nodded in agreement. The grouper for today should be ready. There was no shortage of ingredients, so there was no problem holding a party. Speaking of parties, it is really popular in the United States. People like to hold a party for no reason. They hold a party for birthdays, buy a new car, and even invite a few friends or neighbors to celebrate when their pets give birth. Kinzu's ranch holds few parties. Since he came here, he has only held 2 parties. However, he has received no less than 10 party invitations, all of which were invited by ranchers around. However, Kinzu has been too busy recently, so he declined them politely with apologies and repeatedly promised that he would go when he has time. John blew a whistle and called Sandra, who was put in the stable by Eva, pulled the reins and climbed on the horse. He said hello to Kinzu and rode away. He handed the car to Dale and asked her to park the car. Now Kinzu is becoming more and more like a boss, which means he is getting lazier. Just as he was about to enter the villa, Eva's voice came from the side. Clean, are you going to have a barbecue party tonight? Eva, who had just returned from the stable, fiddled with the whip in her hand and asked with some anticipation. She still loves this kind of lively little party. Kinzu turned his head to look at Eva and almost laughed. Today Eva was wearing the usual tight jeans on her lower body, but she was wearing a blue floral shirt on her upper body, the kind that she often wears when she plays a village girl on TV. Kinzu suppressed his smile and replied with a strange expression. Yes, so we have to trouble our chef Eva to prepare the ingredients. Well, there is still beef and mutton in the cold storage, plus the fish you caught today, and go to the vegetable garden to pick some fresh vegetables. Oh, by the way, there are not many fruits at home. Looking at Eva, who tilted her head and counted on her fingers, Kinzu couldn't help it. Seeing her wearing a blue floral shirt and her hair tied into a ponytail, she looked like a foreign country girl. Eva looked at Kinzu, who was laughing non-stop with some confusion, and looked herself up and down with some confusion. There was nothing wrong. Looking at her cute appearance, Kinzu suppressed his smile. Changing the subject, he said, "Hurry up and prepare the vegetables. I'll go get the oven out." Giving this unscrupulous boss a speechless look, Eva twisted her sexy waist and ran to the vegetable garden to pick vegetables. Kinzu, who was hit by an electric eye, dragged his body, which was somewhat numb from the electric shock, and ran to the villa warehouse to move the oven. "Hey, boss, do you need my help?" Seeing Kinzu struggling to move the oven out, Dale leaned against the door, crossed his arms, and said with a smile. Helplessly rolling his eyes at this guy, Kinzu took the oven down from his arms, rubbed his sore arms, and said, "Look for yourself, don't you see how hard I'm working?" Dale came over and easily lifted the large oven weighing hundreds of pounds out with both hands, and reminded him kindly as she walked away, "Boss, you should go exercise." Kinzu looked at Dale, who seemed to be extremely relaxed while carrying hundreds of pounds, and was silent for a long time. It turned out that this damn girl was waiting for him here. Looking at his somewhat slack biceps, he opened the system to see that his strength was only 11 points, and then thought about Dale's inhuman strength of 42 points. For the first time, Kinzu had the idea of exercising well. Thank you Fenxi for your continued support. Thank you. Chapter 100. Sudden system task. Just when Kinzu was thinking about how to exercise to increase muscle and strength, the elf that had not appeared for a long time suddenly appeared in front of Kinzu. Looking at Fefade in a green gauze dress, she was still as cute and charming as ever, blinking her cute big eyes and calling sweetly, "Master." Kinzu's mood, which had just been hit by Dale, immediately became happy. He stretched out his thumb and index finger, gently pinched Fefade's cute little face, and asked, "Little guy, long time no see, how are you doing recently? What tasks are you doing this time?" "Master, you are so annoying. You pinched me again." The little girl first complained to Kinzu in a coquettish way, and then continued, "I have been doing well recently, eating and sleeping, and I am so happy. This time it is because the system sensed the strong desire in the master's heart, so the task was automatically created." Kinzu was a little confused, scratched his head, and asked in confusion, "Can this task be created by itself?" Of course, the system is very powerful, but because the original intention of the great god is to let the lucky master live a life without worries about food and clothing. So just set up a few simple primary tasks for the master to entertain. The elf blinked its cute big eyes and looked at Kinzu, which meant that the previous tasks were just for you to play. Kinzu had some bad premonitions in his heart. Although the previous tasks were not too difficult, they were not too simple either. What would the official task be like this time? Kinzu suppressed his bad premonition and swallowed hard, and asked, "Little girl, do you mean this mission will be difficult? Will there be any punishment?" Of course there is no punishment. These missions are born out of the strong desire of the master. It is up to the master to decide whether to accept them or not. Feferi smiled sweetly at Kinzu and explained. Looking at the pretty face of the little girl, Kinzu immediately felt that it was the smile of an angel, but when Feferi finished speaking, when Kinzu looked at the pretty face that he thought was an angel just now, he seemed to see two small horns on it. Even the transparent little wings behind the little girl seemed to have become like a devil. Feferi continued to say in that sweet voice, "However, Master, the difficulty of the mission is directly related to the mission goal. If it is a very difficult goal, then the mission difficulty will be very high. If there is any accident during the mission, the system will not be responsible." Kinzu felt a chill on his back. Accident? What other accidents could there be? From what she said, the mission would still be dangerous. Not giving up, he continued to ask, "Feferi, can I know this mission in advance?" "No, the missions are randomly generated according to the master's mission goals." Little Feferi shook her head gently and said innocently, "What if I have an outrageous mission goal in mind? Oh, I forgot to say that this mission goal cannot deviate too far from the ranch and reality." The elf looked scared and looked at Kinzu's somewhat tangled face and said weakly, For example, Master, you want to go to heaven. Why would I go to heaven if I have nothing to do? Specifically. Oh, that is, for example, Master, except for tasks related to the ranch and personal matters, no other tasks can be generated, because the Master made a setting at the beginning, just to prevent the lucky ones from not knowing how high the sky is and how deep the earth is, and blindly making some impossible wishes, so this function was turned off. Kinzu had the urge to vomit blood. Wouldn't it be better if you just said it directly for such a simple thing? But thinking about it, I want to become a little stronger, this wish shouldn't be too big, right? Master, do you need to check the target of this mission? Please call out the task and let me see. Oh. The little girl agreed pitifully. With a wave of her little hand, a transparent screen suddenly appeared in front of Kinzu. There was a task with an unaccepted sign on it, which was clearly displayed. Main quest. The road to becoming stronger 1, unaccepted, because I feel the host's strong desire to become stronger, I have issued this task. Task difficulty. 2 stars accept or abandon. Looking at the simple and clear task introduction on the light screen, Kinzu began to hesitate. Should he accept it or not? This is a problem. However, when Kinzu saw Dale busy outside, he gritted his teeth and made up his mind. Isn't it just a task? I'll take it. He decisively clicked to accept. The screen in front of him changed immediately. The tasks with the unaccepted mark were gone, and instead, there was a task with an unfinished mark. Main quest. The road to becoming stronger, unfinished, task introduction. A mysterious force entrenched in Bossman will take action against the host in the near future because of dissatisfaction with the host's destruction of their plans. Task objective. Successfully escape the attack of the mysterious force. Task reward. Constitution +3, Strength +3. Looking at this crappy task, Kinzu wanted to cry. Why did he do this? Now, he has provoked a mysterious force for no reason, and it attacks. Why is this like a terrorist? Clean, what are you doing in the house? You should go get some pine branches. Oh, okay. Dale walked into the villa and looked at Kinzu, who was a little absent-minded. She was very curious about what happened. It had only been a few minutes and he had become like this. Could it be that he was hit by himself? Kinzu walked out of the villa absent-mindedly, preparing to ride a 4-wheel motorcycle to the short woods not far away to pick up some pine branches. When he pushed the car out, he remembered that John had stored a lot of them in the warehouse. Helplessly patting his head, Kinzu put the 4-wheel motorcycle back into the garage, walked a few steps to the large warehouse next to it, looked at the pine branches piled up in a small pyramid in a corner of the warehouse, and took a bundle back. When Kinzu returned to the barbecue area, Eva Zhao came back from the vegetable garden. She was talking to Dale excitedly. When Kinzu got closer, he could hear Eva talking to Dale about the vegetables in the garden. Seeing Kinzu coming over, Eva said excitedly, "Clean, do you know? The vegetables in the garden are basically ripe. The cucumbers and tomatoes are hanging on the racks. It's incredible." Looking at the basket Eva was carrying, Kinzu realized that the girl had picked a full basket of sweet peppers, green and juicy, eggplants, bright purple, leeks, and your red tomatoes and green prickly cucumbers. Kinzu was so tempted to pick them up and taste them. Second update today. Thanks to the evil Stujane for his reward and support. Thank you. Findi est captulo muchas gracias por la hasta el final. No se olviden like busgasms contenido exclusivo y exeo inmediato. Suscríbete a nuestro Patreon. Recuerda, cada like, suscripción dona que nos anima a continuar. Gracias a todos nos vemos en el próximo video.